Going to call to order the Board of Trustees of the Village of Riverwoods. Would you please stand with me and say the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please. Present.
Here.
Trustee Dickens. Here. Trustee Easton.
Here.
Trustee Hallinger.
Present.
Trustee Jacobson.
Here.
And Trustee Smith.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We will not be approving the minutes of the last meeting at this meeting. They were very complex and detailed, and we are just taking our time to make sure we get it right. Next is the Finance Director's report. Before we start our Finance Director's report, may I have a motion for approval of bills, please?
So moved.
Is there a second? Are there any questions or comments on the bills? Trustee Dickens, please.
Very brief comment on page 15 of the packet. There's a expense called Village Voice expense. I think it's probably time to rename that to more like a marketing communications or advertising expense. And also, this was the expense that was used for the land use survey, for which we actually got credit.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, sure. Timeout.
Sound system on this side of the room.
Oh. Oh. I did not touch it.
Trying to tell us something.
Give it about 30 seconds.
No. I can give this to Rick, and I can share with you. Oh.
That hopefully that's what.
I think we're back on?
No, we're not.
No?
Got a green light.
I got a green light.
Okay,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay, so the Village Voice expense, I think we should probably rename it since the Village Voice is long and gone. And this is an expense for which we got a credit. So I don't know, I just want to make sure it gets coded properly because we do plan to spend this amount with our printer towards the next printing expense.
Okay, yes, we'll be renaming that line item for next budget.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Trustee Smith?
Yeah, wow, that's really loud. So the question I had was, I noticed that there was, in this packet, there was another, call it $1,000 of bills for HT stringer and grinder pump repair. And then like in January 21st, it was like 71,000. November was 22,000. The point of me saying all this, Director Vasquez, is Director Witt, do we have an update on when that contract is going to be bid for grinder pump service and maintenance?
Okay, may I suggest that this might be more appropriate during his, unless you want to pull those from the packet. Then
You asked
maybe
me
we
if I
could
had
address
questions.
that on the director of,
That's fine.
during the director's report. I think he can be more fulsome then.
The other question, I had a question on that same thing, and part of it was why some of those invoices are really old, and I'm sure you can answer that question, but during
Oh,
your,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. And is that agreeable to, then we can do it all at the same time under the report?
Yes.
He can get his-
Test.
Can you hear us? Did you hear that? Can you hear that?
Yes.
Can you hear that? Okay.
Okay, anything else? Roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickens.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Hallinger.
Aye.
Trustee Smith.
Aye.
Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Vasquez, please.
Yes, I'll let Director Witt in his report address the HT stringer. There's work in progress and getting timely invoices from them. As far as my report, I have a few items for tonight. I will be bringing the budget/appropriations ordinance to the board on March 18th, which will incorporate discussion from our finance workshop. Trustee Clayton and I met last week to go over changes made since the October workshop, and I plan to have the final draft out to the board by the weekend. I want to provide it ahead of the normal board packet to allow more time for your review. Please send me any questions you have ahead of time so I can get them addressed ahead of the 18th. The other item is I spoke about at previous meetings that Mayor Ford, Trustee Smith, Chief Dano, our HR consultant, and I met recently with the executive director of IPBC, which is the Intergovernmental Personnel Benefit Cooperative, the group with the healthcare insurance plan alternative to our current plan through the states. They provided pricing for premiums if we switch to their plans for our July 1st insurance renewal period. They quoted us a Blue Cross Blue Choice option similar to our current Blue Cross OAP, as well as the same HMO as one of our current options. I asked the state to provide us with updated pricing so that we could compare, but I was told that these prices wouldn't be available until late April or early May. However, they recommended assuming a 10% increase on their pricing. After comparing the difference in pricing between the IPBC proposed plans and the current state plans, the projected savings for the village will be 2.6%. Those savings could be even higher if the 10% assumed increases in the state plans become reality. Pricing is not the only reason we have looked into this other option. The IPBC is a pooled group. Members are represented and get a vote on how the entity operates. Many surrounding units of government are members, such as Buffalo Grove, Deerfield, Deerfield's Park District and Library District, Libertyville, Barrington, Lake County, the County Forest Preserve District, Glencoe, Winnetka, and Wheeling, just to name a few. All of these units of government are eligible for the same state plan we currently have, but have elected to enroll with the IPBC group instead. IPBC gives members the ability to tailor the plans for their needs. For example, if we wanted to change the deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums, et cetera, we can request IPBC to provide quotes for these types of changes and determine the best option for the village. Based on the performance of the pool, there is potential for additional savings in the form of dividends that could be paid back to members from IPBC. The village could also explore options such as flex spending accounts or health savings accounts. If the village ever decided to offer health insurance to elected officials in whatever payment structure was deemed appropriate, that would also be an option with IPBC. In addition, the Employee Assistance Program, which we currently pay about $2,300 for annually, is included with the IPBC membership. And then one of the last reasons is that our current healthcare option, there is no life insurance component. With IPBC, the village would be able to provide an additional benefit to employees with the group term life and accidental death and dismemberment of 1 year salary for full-time eligible employees that's able to be provided at for about $200 per month. Employees could also seek additional life insurance policies at the competitive rates IPBC provides out of their own pocket. The IPBC group would require the board to take action by mid-March in order for them to accept us as a member in time for the July 1 plan year. Due to the timing of our meeting and of our meetings and not being able to get this on the agenda for tonight, I asked IPBC if we could instead bring this for approval on March 18th. That is agreeable to them as long as I can let them know if we intend to bring it to the board on the 18th. At this time, I would ask if anyone on the board has concerns with bringing this to vote on March 18th, please let me know. If not, I can prepare the appropriate agenda item for the next meeting.
Are there any questions for Trustee Smith, please?
So I don't really have a question. It's more just a statement. Having been a health and welfare benefits consultant for way too many years, 25 plus. I feel like the IPBC that Director Vasquez just ran through. Seems like a very viable option. Seems like better benefits at lower to same cost. There seems to be no downside. And as Director Vasquez mentioned, many of the villages around us use it and have issued no complaints that we are aware of. And they've retained it for many years. So I do believe that this is a good option for the village and that we should consider it on March 18th.
Are there any other comments? Thank you very much. We'll on the agenda for the 18th. Are there any other questions for our director at this point? Okay, Treasurer is not with us tonight. Director of Community Services, Director Witt, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We've got a few items for us tonight. Maybe we'll start off with Stringer, since that's the hot topic of the night. Yes, we acknowledge that there are more than we want invoices from Stringer, which are past due, not on our account, but on theirs. Some of them are submitted months late. Some of them are, a lot of them have been kicked back. We've been asking for more detailed reports, particularly anything that's over $2,000, and there seem to be quite a few of them. So we have, Director Vasquez and myself and Engineer Smith have been working with Stringer, trying to get them in line with regard to their invoicing on a timely basis. We've talked about certain amounts that we need to bring forth to the village board for approval. And we are currently working on establishing a list of typical tasks like replacement of the panel boards or wiring or the pumps themselves that we can get lump sum bids on. So we are working on putting together that package, and hopefully within the next month we'll be able to get something out. The problem that we have is at the moment, Stringer is the only one in the area that's qualified to do that work. So we want to be working with E1, who is the pump manufacturer, who has told us in the past that they are willing to train anybody to do the work. So what we're hoping to do is still bide enough time before we set the package out that we might get competitive bids instead of just a proposal from one contractor. And as part of that, we're also looking at a program, a multi-year program to actually replace most of the grinder pumps that are within the village, because a lot of them are past useful life. We have some locations in the village where there are some of these homes are on their third pump in roughly 20 years, and that's way too many pumps. Part of the problem, a lot of the problem that we see is our residents really don't understand what these pumps do, how they work, and we find way too much stuff that's being thrown into the system that is actually damaging them. And we need to take a serious look on how we work on charging those activities once we find out that that is occurring. So anyhow, that'll all be part of a comprehensive package that, again, we are currently working on. Talk about Saunders Road, unless.
I'm not, are there any questions on that?
I just have one question.
Trustee Jamerson, please.
Do we know how many other municipalities use this system?
To my knowledge, one.
Which, do you know which one it is?
It's, I want to say it is within Lake County Department of Public Works.
Okay, that's good.
Within their area of service. However, the county has declined, even though they helped set it up, they have declined doing maintenance on that. And when they heard the experience that we've had with the repeated things, they breathed a sigh of relief saying, I made the right decision. That was the Director of Public Works. So, however, what we are going to be looking at is to see if we can maybe partner with the county for doing the repairs and see if they have somebody on staff who is willing to get trained in these things, see if we can do some intergovernmental work back and forth with the county to provide a second person, a backup to the norm in the event that something happens, Stringer goes out of business, that, you know, we're not just stuck with nobody who can do the work. So our goal is to have two parties available to be doing the work.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Hollander.
This is the first time I've heard that there are things being put into the system that shouldn't be put in there. It seems logical, but could you give a couple examples?
Certainly. I guess the biggest thing that becomes an issue is sanitary products, wipes, pads, other things like that. The grinder pumps are not capable of destroying that. So even if you have baby wipes, okay, they seem very ecologically friendly. Well, that might be the case when they sit in the sewage system for 30, 40 days before they actually go through the treatment plant. Yes, they will dissolve. So all that packaging that says that these things are dissolvable and yes, they're flushable and they're great for your septic system, it takes probably less than a minute to go from your house to the grinder pump. It does not dissolve that fast. What happens is it grinds some of it and then it clogs up on the teeth. The teeth end up breaking off, and then you have all these metal parts that are inside. You have other things. There's a lot of sand and gravel that we're finding out lately. So whether that's somebody coming in from the house and washing their shoes off and it goes down the drain and into the pump, that's a killer on these teeth as well. These are not ejector pumps, which are made to take solids. These things actually grind and pulverize the products that go in there. So any of the effluent that's there, it grinds it up and then shoots it out. These are not ejector pumps like you would have in your sump if you had an overhead sewer in your house. So we have a form that we want to be sending out to every resident that's got one of these, just as a reminder of what you can or what you can't put in.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on that topic? Good detail.
That was fun.
Uh,
Saunders
Please
Road.
continue, yes.
Tree removal is scheduled to begin on March 10th. There are 153 trees which are scheduled to be removed. They need to be cut down no later than March 31st to avoid issues with the state and their declaration of being friendly to the long-eared bat. And perhaps to answer a question which I know is forthcoming, the project does have plus or minus 70 trees which are scheduled to be planted. Those trees, there's about 7 different species of trees that will be planted. They need to be planted somewhere within the realm of the project, anywhere along Saunders Road, any side of the road. And though the drawings themselves show locations for them, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to rely on the village ecologist or the village forester to come and say, put one here, put one there type of deal. So we'll see, that might be dependent upon how many trees were actually removed at a particular property, or something which we might want to say, based on lights going around a corner, may be beneficial to put a tree here or not put a tree there. So that will be at the discretion of the village as far as where they go. All right. So again, scheduled to start on March 10th. So also on March 10th, talking about trees, the bids for the hazardous tree program are due. We hope to have a contract brought to this board for approval at the March 18th meeting. In the hazardous tree program, there are 426 trees scheduled to either be pruned or removed. Some of them, the bulk of those are on private property, 381 of them. And then we have private roads, right-of-ways, 17, village road right-of-way, 22, and 2 in a county right-of-way. As part of that program, the work is going to begin as of April 1st. Homeowners will have an opportunity to contract with the contractor that the award is given to, the awarded contract is given to, after which certain date the village will have the trees removed or pruned, and those charges will be back charged to the resident based on the unit prices that are within the contract. So homeowners will know what the costs are, but it's a matter of whether or not they want to bother to have somebody take it on their own and get a better price, contract with the awarded contractor at the unit price, or have the village actually have them taken care of at the unit price. Notices will be sent to the homeowners sometime after the contract has been awarded to explain their options in that program. Next item, our background check continues on the building inspector. He has accepted the offer, and we hope to have him on board shortly. There was a bit of a glitch in the fingerprint process. They had to resubmit a second time, so we're just waiting a couple of days for that to come in. Adjudication will not occur this month. There will be no hearing. There's a scheduling conflict with the village prosecutor. We currently have 3 cases in queue. None of them are really exotic. As I alluded to before, staff has been recently working with the Lake County Department of Public Works and reviewing the current IGA that the village has with them to determine if it is still beneficial to the village. Last year, just as a particular item that is noteworthy in here, last year the village paid about $30,000 to repair water main breaks. The cost of those breaks, including management and a physical repair, was that $30,000, but that amount did not include pavement or landscape restoration. Since prior to my starting here with the village, Gewalt Hamilton has been managing all aspects of the repair of the water main breaks. However, in our review of the IGA, we learned that one of the services that the county covers under the IGA is the cost of labor and material required to fix the break. And since GHA is responsible for managing that work from the first phone call to the end of the work being done, and that happens under their contract as part of the responsible operator in charge. Essentially moving forward from here and including the last break that occurred about a week ago on Oakhurst, the village will be paying nothing for water main break repairs except for the cost of restoration of pavement and landscaping. It's a good deal for us. So we would anticipate we're easily saving $30,000 a year, if not more. And that $30,000 was only based on 3 breaks. And further, Federal Life. Utility cutoffs for the building's gas line occurred today. That was the last disconnect that needs to occur for the building to be taken down. The electric and water cutoffs for the reservoir are still pending. The demolition contractor continues to work on stripping items from the interior of the building. Generally, they're looking at pulling all the metals that they can and recycling those. Building demolition will occur thereafter. However, there is no date set for the ball to hit the wall, and they will have a wrecking ball in this particular project based on the construction of the construction type of the building. We are asking them to give us at least a 48-hour notice so that we can at least post that this is going to happen in case anybody wants to see this thing come down. The tree and shrub removal that's scheduled to occur on that site will be completed within a 2-day time period, but that will occur sometime after the contractor finishes removal all of the trees on Saunders Road. So we would expect that perhaps the 3rd week of March, and all those trees still need to be taken down by the 31st. And lastly, not to steal thunder from the chair of the Plan Commission, though she doesn't know this yet, the staff review committee is in the process of reviewing the Orphans of the Storm project submittal. That internally will have a solid meeting next week, and it's most likely that this case will move forward to the Plan Commission sometime in May. And that's my report.
I just want to make sure that we're clear that to all that when we start the demolition at Federal Life, that we are in touch with Metal Lake. I know we've been in touch with Randy Yaffe, so just so everyone knows that we've.
Right. That's why since
You've done that.
Since the date has not been scheduled yet, I'm waiting for this 48-hour notice so that we can send notice to them just so that they're made aware of what's happening.
Yeah. Trustee Jamerson, please.
I'm sorry, I missed the last item that the Plan Commission was going to be surprised about. Can you repeat that?
Orphans of the Storm.
Oh,
We're
thank you.
currently reviewing those drawings.
Got it.
But based on the timeliness of that, and we don't know how long it'll take for them to revise the drawings, which they will need to go through a revision, it's likely they'll be going to the meeting in May.
Okay, thank you.
There any, Trustee Clayton?
Plan Commission Chair Brightcoff forwarded me an article today about Deerfield joining a solar consortium along with Highland Park and a number of other suburbs that was supposed to save their residents a fair amount of money. Is that something we can look into now, or are we locked into our current consolidation program?
Just one.
I wish I could tell you what we are in the program at the moment, because it's like a moving train at the moment as far as where those numbers are. how that's going. I know that Mike Mudge is trying to get back in front of this board, but before we do that, we want to have
Oh,
have
sure.
our own review of those numbers.
That, yes, we've been in touch with Mike Mudge, and I saw the message that you got as well. And I've asked trustee Jamerson some questions about the aggregation and if he could
Well,
speak to that.
so the current issue right now is that there was supposed to be a power auction in, I think it was late December, early January, where the generators of the electricity actually set their rates for the next period. My understanding is that auction did not happen, but the one that did happen before that, the rates went up 200%, which are going to get passed on to everybody. And the main reason why they went up so much was because the increased use of electricity for data centers, specifically AI data centers. And so everybody was hoping that the auction that was going to happen in December or January would maybe settle those rates down a little bit. Most of the providers were looking at a small rate increase as they've had in the past of maybe 10%. And the village did get bids based on that. Can I continue on that path, or do you want me to wait?
I think maybe we just want to
Okay, well,
take a
anyways,
time out because we don't really know what he's.
the consortium that you're, so we don't know what's going to happen with that yet. We really don't. The consortium that you're talking about is a consortium that was formed many years ago by those suburbs, and they were in an aggregation program, and they still are to some extent. Some are in it, some are not, but they did go through they are now looking at solar, which if we can figure out a way to do that, that would be great. I will say that the aggregation program that the village started 12 years ago, 10 years ago, has saved the residents that were in the program collectively millions of dollars in electricity. And I'm not padding that. It was at one point in the second 3-year term, the village had saved the residents over $2.5 million. So, but the rates have changed, things have changed in the interim, and the last time we did not save residents that much money, and so anyways, we should look into the solar. We don't know what's going on with the current program because it's complicated, but that's where we are, so.
Are there any other questions? Trustee Dickens, please.
One quick comment. Just wanted to remind everyone that we do have a section for economic development on the website, and we should probably have an update for Federal Life posted both in the village newsletter and under economic development, just to keep everyone in the loop of what's going on. Thank you.
Are there any other?
Just
Oh,
one,
sure.
just
Oh,
one
I'm
more.
sorry. Trustee Smith.
I was listening to Trustee Jamerson talking about solar, and I think that fits in really nicely with what the village is going to be trying to achieve through sustainability and climate action plan. So I think we should wholeheartedly look into that and see if it's viable and what we can do with it.
Are there any other questions or comments for our director? Okay, moving forward, consultants reports. Our attorney, please.
I have nothing that's not on the agenda.
It's just fine. Trustee Clayton, please.
I recently came to understand that the fire department is going out for a referendum to help pay for our project. And so my question is, do you have confidence that everything is going to go smoothly? And if not, do we have good options?
I never have confidence that things are going to go smoothly. But in terms of the village's obligations, we are basically on a path that's independent of what the fire district eventually builds on the site. They have total optionality. It's their decision of how they build it, when they build it, how they finance it. The village's decision was to acquire the site, convey part of it to the fire district, master design the stormwater system for the site, and implement all of that. The fire district can use its parcel now in 2 years and 5 years, whenever they're ready and whenever things work to their, when it's ripe for them. But the village won't be disadvantaged. We will have acquired the parcel. We will have improved it suitably. The fire district will be able to make use of its uses, and the village will be able to deal with the rest of the site.
Are there any questions for our village attorney? Okay, moving forward, this evening we have a report from our village ecologist. Steve, where'd you get to? There you are. Perfect. Oh, I was going to say, you could actually sit where Chief normally is too. That way you can see everybody and you can see the screen.
So I have some slides to show. We can get those up. So usually I'm just presenting mostly to the board. I do this maybe once every year or so. It's kind of an update on like the state of the woodlands in Riverwoods. I'm Steve Zimmerman, so I'm the consulting ecologist for the village. I've been here since 2015 doing this. And essentially I've got about a handful of slides, and it's great that you all are here, obviously for something different, but I have something now I can pass on to you all related to the woodlands. You can go to the next slide. There we go. So I'm going to keep this concise and brief, but want to relay a lot of this information. So when I started in 2015, I was working with Cheryl Chamberlain, one of the trustees at the time, and came up with this. I basically went around the entire village and mapped out the different types of woodland communities. So as you drive across Riverwoods, it may all look the same to the untrained eye, but there are actually 5 or 6 different types of woodlands, basically working from the Des Plaines River that you can see on the left side of that map, working to the west. You go from like a floodplain woodland to the red area, what's called a mesic woodland, to a dry mesic woodland in the purple, and eventually out into more of like a savanna area in the yellow. And again, these are just different types of woodlands dominated by different species of trees based on soils, elevation, hydrology, and other factors. And I will also point out, because this is very unique to this area and Riverwoods, is if you can see the green splotches all over the map, that's what's called northern flatwoods. So that's a wet woodland dominated by mostly swamp white oak. And it's actually a globally threatened ecosystem. And I bring this up because as I'll tell you more about the consults that I do, this is the environment that a lot of people have on their lots. And I often hear, I want to get rid of the water. And when you do that, that destroys that ecosystem. You can go to the next slide, I think. So a lot happened in 2017 and 18 related to the village's tree and woodland ordinance. If you don't know this, back in, I think it was 2005, the village went through a rigorous effort to put in place a very unique ordinance. It's a woodland protection ordinance. So not just trees, but the woodland environment itself. And it was difficult to enforce because we didn't actually know where the woodlands were located in the village. And by woodlands, I mean it needs to have a canopy of native trees and generally a natural ground layer, right, that's not being kept. That's sort of the definition of a woodland in Riverwoods. So what we did is we actually, the company I used to work for, we flew the village with a camera that picks up special colors and different types of images, put it into a GIS mapping program, And basically, we're able to spit out maps like this you see in the middle that show for every single lot in the village now, we have an individual map that you can come to Village Hall to get that shows you in orange where the woodlands are essentially located on your property. And this is related to things like when you want to put an addition on your home, the woodland ordinance says you can't remove more than 20% of that orange area. And the village basically works through me to keep track of that. So like if you take 15% of a woodland and then you move and somebody else comes in, they don't get another 20%. They only get 5%. And I'm the one that keeps track of all those things. But again, you can get your map at any time by coming to the village, and Wendy can print one off for you. Next slide. There's a lot on here, but I wanted to point this out. So in 2018, the tree ordinance was combined with the woodland protection ordinance into one ordinance. It just made sense. And the highlights from that are the second bullet, like I just said. So in those orange areas, a resident is allowed to clear and do things in that orange area up to 20% removal. Beyond that is not allowed. This is important too. Most communities, villages regulate trees that are 6 inches and greater. In Riverwoods, we regulate trees 1.5 inches and greater. So that's pretty small. The reason for that is to capture the shrub layer of the woodlands. So the woodlands have shrubs that should be there as well. And going down to 1.5 inches captures a lot of that woodland layer. So all trees are regulated, but because we have this unique woodland ecosystem, only certain desirable native trees are protected. So in other words, things like cottonwoods and elm and some of these weedier species, they're regulated. In other words, you need to get a permit to remove them, but you don't have to pay a mitigation fee because they're trees that don't really belong in a healthy ecosystem, if that makes sense. Whereas desirable trees like oaks, to remove them, you usually have to pay, in most cases, a mitigation fee to remove a healthy oak tree. Let's see. I think we can kind of skip. The last bullet basically says, just so you know, if you do any type of development on your property, and let's say you need to clear some oak trees and you owe more than $5,000 in mitigation, you can actually use that money to do ecological restoration on the remaining woodlands on your lot. And I'll kind of tie that into the next thing here. Next slide, please. Oh, yes. So back in 2018 as well, again, a lot of stuff happened 2016, 17, 18. The village, so the village owns 5 or 6 lots that account for about 35 acres. And a lot of it wasn't basically there was buckthorn coming up and there was no active management going on. So in August of 2018, the board adopted what we're calling the 10-year woodland stewardship plan. That started in 2018 with a lot of clearing of buckthorn and invasive trees on all the village lots. And then, so last year was year 6 of that plan. This year will be year 7. The company I work for, Baxter and Woodman Natural Resources, we actually are implementing that plan for the village. We've submitted a proposal for this year. I think it's going through some legal review with the terms. But what we do is we come in and we just maintain the status quo. So we herbicide invasives, we do controlled burns, that kind of thing. Next slide. Okay, so this is mostly for the crowd now that I have here. The village has a very unique program. It's the Ecological Cost Share Program. And what that is basically is you can contact the village, and for $75, I come out to your lot and basically walk around for an hour, and I tell you what kind of woodlands you have, what the condition is. And the village has 7 different programs that I basically tell you you could use to improve the health of your property, the ecological health. And I give you essentially a little report with a map of what you have on your property and what of these programs you can apply for. And there's a cost share. So most of these are 50% up to a certain amount. Each program has a little bit different reimbursement. I always like to show this image on the right. So this is a map of all the parcels in the village and where I've done ecological consultations since 2016. The colors just are different years. So I think I've done over 250, even though it doesn't look like it, and over 300 when you count people that have had multiple consultations with me. Next slide. So this is more for the board, and I think I've been showing this every year for a couple of years now. And on the, let's see, where do we want to start here? On the top is the number of consultations I've done per year. You can see it's kind of all over the place. It started out pretty strong when the programs first sort of came to be. It leveled off. It's been a little slow the last 2 years. I'm thinking this year is going to be, I'm probably going to have 50 or more, because I know the Sustainability Committee and the RPC are pushing for people to remove more buckthorn. So hopefully I'll be getting more calls. I've already done 5 consultations this year, and I have 3 tomorrow, hopefully, if the weather permits. And it's only mid-March. Usually people don't have me out till April when, you know, things start to green up. So the bottom chart is, on the left-hand side, these are all of the different cost share programs. And then by year, how much the village has reimbursed residents for each of those programs. Really, I guess kind of what matters is on the far right is the average. So kind of looking down through these, the most used program is the invasive shrub removal program, mostly because that's for people to remove buckthorn. You can see on average, the village reimburses residents over $20,000 a year for that. Other ones that are popular are the native tree planting program and the native seeding program. In other words, you come and take the buckthorn out, a lot of times you just have nothing, it's bare dirt. And that's when you come in and you apply native seed and you get a ground layer established. That's also a pretty popular program. And I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but bottom right corner. So essentially the village is reimbursing residents around $55,000 every year on average to implement things through the cost share program. I think, yeah, I want to point, and I'm glad that you all are here because this is something I show every year because it's a real thing that's happening. You guys have all seen a lot of the oak death in the last 5 or 6 years, right? It is not specific to Riverwoods. It is a climate change thing that I'm seeing all over the Midwest, everywhere I go. In 2018, 19, and 20 were the 3 wettest springs on record. It used to be in Riverwoods, because I review all the tree removal permit applications. You would never see a live oak tree on a tree removal permit application. In 2018 and 19, I started to see some show up, and I kind of didn't think anything of it at the time. And then in 2020, it really showed up where half of the applications I was getting had oak trees. That resulted in meetings with forest preserves and bringing in Bartlett Tree to do some testing because people were thinking it was oak wilt. It is not oak wilt. It's what's called oak decline syndrome. Those 3 wet springs basically cause root rot in specifically white oaks and red oaks. And when that happens, the tree declines slowly, and then you get secondary, which is why it's called a syndrome. You get secondary things like chestnut borer, the weather, the ground not freezing like it used to, and it's all these things now after this root rot. And these trees, usually they antler. So on that top right picture, this is kind of the beginning of what this looks like, is the branches don't leaf out on the tips. It's called antlering. And then also these droughts we're getting too. So you get all this rain and then there's drought. The oaks, they're just not able to handle this. And usually then I see a lot of applications come in because usually it's mid-August, and all of a sudden that bottom right picture, I get people telling me that seemed like the tree turned brown overnight. And that's the process of this oak decline syndrome. Swamp white oaks, which luckily is the most dominant oak tree in the village, and that's because of those flatwood areas that I told you about. It is tolerating this well because it is an oak tree that can basically be underwater for 2 months straight and then dry out in the summer for 2 months straight. So it is doing well, and why I think I'm optimistic that not all the oaks are going to die, right? Because again, the majority are the swamp white oaks, but I wanted to point out that that's what's going on with the oak trees. I think that's my last slide.
That's your last slide. Any members of the board have any questions or comments for our ecologist, please? Trustee Eastman and then Trustee Clayton, please.
So Steve, to build off the cost share form that we had last week, if you could prioritize 2 changes to the Woodlands cost share program that would either make it, more economical for residents or improve its ability to actually, change the environment for the better, what would those be briefly?
Yes, that's a really good question. So a few years back, one change that was made, which made a big difference, was that for 2 of the programs, the invasive shrub removal and the invasive tree removal, the reimbursement was changed from $2,000 to $4,000 because those are expensive things, and many more people are undertaking that because there's a $4,000 match. There's a program or 2 I mentioned that are very popular. Those only have $2,000 matches. I think if there was a greater match, more people might, specifically the native tree and shrub planting. So with a $2,000 match, if $4,000, you think that's a lot, but if you plant, 10 3-inch oak trees, that's about all you can do for that. So that would be my biggest thing is just, I think the more people get reimbursed, right, the more they're willing to do.
Thank you.
Trustee Clayton.
The question I asked a couple of meetings ago, it pertains specifically to the village-owned properties. We're in year 6 of that program. Are we where we expect it to be? Are there any notable successes or issues that you know of? Is there anything else that's needed? Just sort of we approved the budget without really getting an understanding of where we were in the program.
Yeah, so that 10-year plan is contracted annually. So basically, we give a cost annually to the village to approve. I would say, so yes, after the buckthorn removal, the sites actually took off better than I expected. There was a budget to go in and do seeding, and I remember we waited a year, and especially across the street, the Chianti lots, which is a large flatwoods, it's super high quality. And that was burned for the first time last fall. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going with this. So the one thing I would say that the village lots need specifically out here, so what has happened is behind the village here, it used to be what's called a mesic woodland dominated by red oaks. Chianti Creek runs back behind here. And what's happening is, again, with this, like the rain events that are more intense, it overtops and it's made this back here more wet than it used to be. And so we had a lot of trees die. So I think planting sycamores, swamp white oak, things that can tolerate that water, specifically back here, that's what's needed. The Rivenburg parcel is unbelievable. There's some rare stuff that I saw, wild sarsaparilla, which I guess don't care, but I've never seen it before in my life, and it's out at Rivenburg. The police station looks good too. A lot of the oaks that were planted there are surviving. And this lot across the street needs nothing other than just the controlled burn every 3 years. But I think this lot needs the most attention.
Would it be okay to ask the village ecologist to kind of give us an estimate of what he thinks needs to be done back over here and how much it would cost?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Federal Life is now, I guess, the villages, that property, or at least part of it. Has that been added on to this program yet?
No, it has not. I have not been informed of that or what we want to do with
I
that.
think that's the only village-owned property remaining outstanding, and of course, it just happened, but.
Yeah.
You're
I would
talking
say-
about the strip of woodland back behind that
Well,
was
no,
the.
I would say about 3/4 of it will at least be non-fire department controlled.
But it'll be stormwater. So there will be, we are developing, in our intergovernmental agreement with the fire district, we retain the right to design the nature of the vegetative cover around the detention, so that the type of work that Steve did before, when we had another proposal where we were going to have a nice slope to the detention and try and really create native buffer, we intend to do the same thing.
So that I did know about. So if there is a naturalized detention basin with native plantings that the village owned, yes, that would, I think, would fall into this 10-year program every year. Yep.
Are there any other comments, questions for?
He's got one. Am I allowed?
Sure. Director Vasquez, please.
Just, we have a lot of residents here, and as you pointed out, there's been an issue with some of these oaks dying. If someone were to notice the beginning stages, that antlering, is there anything that they can do proactively, or is it once you see that, you're a little too late?
I knew this question was coming. Oh boy. So I'm not going to sugarcoat this. What I usually tell residents is, yeah, you can apply certain things to the tree and spend a lot of money doing it and maybe save the tree for a couple more years. But what I'm saying is they eventually die.
Nice. Trustee Dickin, please.
Yeah. Steve, it's good to see you. I know you're a walking encyclopedia on the subject of buckthorn removal and restoration projects. And I know that we here in Riverwoods are in a very unique situation where we live among very heavy woodlands, unlike any surrounding communities nearby. With that said, the presence of woodlands and the presence of wetlands are not a disclosure on any property sales. That's not a discussion that I want to pick up, but I know that Long Grove, for instance, the village of Long Grove takes on the responsibility of maintaining woodlands and doing prescribed burns, not for all properties, but for some select properties where they feel that those specific wetlands have potential for whatever ecological purposes. Is this something that's been ever discussed in the past? Is this something that's worth a discussion in your opinion? Maintaining these woodlands and wetlands is a big responsibility, and for some of our property sizes, it could get quite expensive. Just your thoughts on this.
So you're talking about the village kind of fronting for a private lots.
Correct.
Yeah, so
Yep.
that's really never been discussed.
Thank you.
I wish I could tell you more, but yeah,
okay.
it's
Thank
kind
you.
of,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Moving on, Plan Commission report, Chairman Brightcoff.
Good evening. I have a very brief report. The Plan Commission will not meet this month because we don't have any agenda items. I'm glad to hear we will probably have something in May. And that's all. Any questions?
Any questions thank you very much.
Thank you.
And welcome back to our chair of the ZBA.
Thank you, and I have an even briefer report. It's good to be back.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you. Police report, our chief is on a well-deserved vacation. I don't think we have anything that we need to report from the police department at this point. Moving on to the fire district, Chief Kruger is with us this evening. Chief.
John, left it on for me? All right, good. Good evening. I just wanted to inform the board and the residents, our April 1st referendum for our new station relocation allocation project. The board's been really gracious in giving us the opportunity to put some information on the newsletter and let us display our website. So our website has way more information than I can speak to right now. It's updated daily because we have input from residents daily, and then we'll take those questions and if we can answer them or better improve the information out there, we'll put that on our website. So it's not stagnant, it's very fluid and dynamic. And like I said before, there's a website that's on the newsletter, and that's where you go for all the information that you'll need to make a educated decision for April 1st. And that's all I have.
Are there any questions for our chief? Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you to the board again. And we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on for comments from the president. We need to reschedule our April 1st board meeting. The consolidated election is held on April 1st, and this is a voting site. So we won't be able to hold our meeting here. I've heard from Trustee Jamerson about his April plans, but I have not heard from anyone else. We seem to have a light agenda for that meeting. So unless, I know, it's amazing.
Didn't we talk earlier today, Chris?
Not for April 1st. Well, send your schedules to me, please, and we'll move on. Unless anybody's ready for me today to tell me when you're available or when you're not available. We really want to look at possibly the same week, except maybe the next day, which is April 2nd. There's a Plan Commission meeting on the 3rd. The following week is, you're in town still, 7. The 8th, the Thorngate Homeowners Association is meeting in Village Hall, or the 9th. So there's a limited selection of dates if we still want to go forward with that meeting. So
I thought
how
the Plan
about
Commission wasn't going to meet that day, so Thursday is
in
available.
April?
Yeah.
Are you meeting in April?
No, they don't know.
They don't know?
That they're not meeting.
It's March, they're not meeting. Email me, please, with your availability for those first few dates in April, and we'll make a decision from there. Okay, second is filing of the Statement of Economic Interest. That's due May 1. If you haven't already done so, please do so. And the last item is Committee of the Whole. And I simply wanted to raise this because there seemed to be a number of ideas suggested by trustees for further discussion. I raised the topic of having a Committee of the Whole meeting again, so these ideas are not lost, but have a venue for discussion. But given the increase in our business activity lately, this may not be practicable or workable. In the meantime, I have resumed on the agenda the item board comments, which may prove to provide the same kind of forum. So simply at this point, I ask the board to think about resuming that practice of having the first meeting of the month be a Committee of the Whole, meaning we would not be taking any action, but simply a forum for discussion. I also will be suggesting this as a topic for our upcoming governance workshop. Will be held the second meeting in May. So that's just for your information. At this point, visitors wishing to address the board on topics other than items on the agenda. And I think we might, yeah, Elise, did you, yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elise Powers.
Yeah, gotta get on tape.
Okay. Hi, I'm Elise Powers. I live on Gemini Lane, and I'm here to discuss the burning in Riverwoods. Where I live, we have 2 neighbors who are very frequently burning in large quantities in close proximity to our wood house. I know this has been discussed at other meetings. I travel every week, so this is the only meeting I've been able to attend recently. I just want to reiterate how strongly I feel, my family feels, and our neighbors feel about the risk that we feel we are taking living in Riverwoods, which is astonishing to me that I would come to a suburb from the city and feel less safe than I did in the city of Chicago. So much so that we've had to get fire extinguishers in every room of our house because the flames are so huge and so close to our house. We had a neighbor who they have a large pond about 10 feet from our property line. And even when the house was listed, it was described as this beautiful pond for kayaking, canoeing, and ice skating. That's how big it was. They lit a bonfire in that pond that was so big, the flames were higher than our house. We called the fire department. They came, observed it, and came to our door and said, unless the treetops are on fire, do not call us again. The fire chief has spoken at this meeting and said there is not enough water in Riverwoods to put out fires in our community. There are not enough fire hydrants. I know that there are people who feel that it is an infringement on people's rights to tell them they are not allowed to burn, that there needs to be restrictions. What is an issue is our safety and our health. I know that many people say that burning is a hobby of theirs. We see our neighbor burning trash, burning boxes. It's not a simple bonfire for a few friends. This is a massive fire that is very close to our house. I have a 1-year-old, I'm pregnant. We cannot open our windows in the summer. We cannot sit outside with our friends in the summer because the smoke is so thick, it is egregious. I mentioned that I fly all the time. On my flights on United, they always start by saying comfort is our passion, but your safety is our priority. And I encourage you to take that mindset. In the coming weeks, when this is reevaluated and voted on, we have spent months as about 25 neighbors coming up with very reasonable recommendations on how to create a safe living environment for everyone that allows controlled burning on certain days of a month so that we can sleep peacefully at night. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on a topic other than what's on the agenda? Okay, moving on to, yes, Mark.
I live at 15 Big Oak Lane. My mom's 83 years old. Mark Mulvihill, Mulvihill. Sure. This is the water out of my mom's drain. This is what she has to bathe with. I've been patient. I've been asking for help. I just recently noticed across the street, we live on the corner of Deerfield and Riverwoods Road, across the street from the fire station. There is an actual water fountain I just noticed for pets, for animals, and humans to public water. I'm having such a hard time dealing with, there's a fire hydrant down our street. There's one down another leg of Big Oak Lane. There is nothing down on our end. We just recently hired last week the Snelton and Sons, who performed a acid, we have I think it's almost 200 some feet deep well. We get 2 gallons a minute and nothing is to remedy the problem. They said you could possibly dig another well and get water that way. You might increase somewhat of quantity, but you're not going to get any better quality. I did bring this up before a couple months ago to the board. We're getting nailed. We're getting the 20 some feet of our property taken by the Lake County. So we're losing that, which is they're taking her to court for. The other side of Riverwoods Road now is talking about a bike path, and we're losing some property on that side. It's in discussion. Now, even in our front lane, we're on Big Oak, so we're one of the properties that are also affected by this privatization of the streets. Granted, we live in a cul-de-sac. It's a 2-lane road. It's a much bigger. This is why my mom and dad picked this property 55 years ago. These are reasons for their decisions, and we talk about equality and equity. They got up, down this bike path. We're stuck at 6 feet for a fence line. Well, we understand that 15 feet is going on the other side, on the Thorngate property. How is that equity and just? So I'm just pleading to the board to look into if there's anything for grants. I just have a hard time believing that we can sit in our property and look and visually see fire hydrants all around our house. But this is what my mom is bathing with on a daily basis. It's tough to swallow. I've been patient for a couple of months, but I have no other choice. We can't sell the house because it doesn't yield 5 gallons per minute. So what do I do? So I'm here just to plead with you guys. If there's any programs, if there's any types of government subsidies, anything, we can't do much more than what we're doing. Besides taking buckets of water, we drink, we have water delivered, we have it. She's going to my house to take a shower because I don't have the problem. It's tough. So we have a house that we live in, we pay taxes on it, and she almost can't live there at this point. So thank you for your time. If there's anything, Chris knows my contact information. Please let me know.
Trustee Hollander?
Maybe I misunderstood you, but you said you have fire hydrants adjacent to your property or just
They're
close?
down on Big Oak Lane Forks. There is a fire hydrant down the street that's about 8 houses away. There's another fire hydrant on the other cul-de-sac, but there is nothing going back up to Deerfield Road. There's also fire hydrants because we are on the corner. We pie-shaped. We back up to Deerfield and Riverwoods, and they're right across the street.
Other than the cost, there is no restriction for someone being able to hook up to the water that it supplies a fire hydrant, is there? Okay.
Is it because it's village? The water fountain that's right next to the fire hydrant that we can see through our backyard, is that village property or is that county property?
But the reason you're not hooking up to the fire hydrant, the water supply in the fire hydrant is related to cost, not because it isn't allowed. Is that correct?
For my understanding, that it was about almost $500,000 to go from the end of the street to put another fire hydrant and then connection fees to our house. So yes, that's $250,000, $500,000 for a house that's worth $6 million. Doesn't make sense. So, but you need water to live. So what's my alternative? My mom can't afford that. So any other questions?
Thank you very much, Mark. I really appreciate you coming in and saying that. That is one of the questions that we were looking at with the Water Infrastructure Committee. And how do we create a skeleton throughout the village is the next step. And so that's very much on mind. Are there any other comments? Okay, is there anyone else wishing to address the board this evening on topics other than agenda items? Okay, thank you. New business. First on the docket is the approval of a donation to the Deerfield Parents Network in the amount of $2,000. And we have members from the DPN with us this evening. Jessica and Jen, correct? Yes.
Actually, yeah, sorry.
Can you repeat your names for?
Of course, yeah, I'm going to do that. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Berger, been here before, resident of Riverwoods. I am the head co-chair of the after party. You've seen me before. This is Corey Swender. She is
Corey Swender.
Oh, sorry.
Corey. That's fine. And I'm the co-president of DPN with Jen, who couldn't make it.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Her son has the flu.
Yeah.
So we are here, we'll speak independently, but to formally request your generous donation of $2,000 for both DPN and the after party. We have, as we've discussed in the past, different operating budgets. DPN operates on one, the after party operates on another. So we generously split that donation down the middle. But we wanted to just formally make that request and then just take the opportunity to just tell you a little bit about both programs, just to make sure that we're clear to approve the request.
Does anybody have any questions for our guests here?
Oh.
Would anybody like to make a motion for the donation?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we make a
Second.
$2,000 donation to the Deerfield Parent Network for the after party.
Thank you, Trustee Jamerson. Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Clayton, please. Are there any other questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
I actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Dickon.
Or I could ask the questions after you talk about your mission and why you're doing
No,
this.
go ahead. I don't know if, yeah, I mean, you can, whatever.
Go right
you like.
ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll do it then. So I've mentioned in the past to the board that I'm deeply concerned that the 6 of us here are deciding on behalf of our entire community which nonprofits causes we're going to be supporting. So I know you guys have very good intentions, and I personally support your mission, and I realize that there's tragic history that caused your initiatives. I have no idea how the majority of the residents feel and which causes they would want for us to support by spending their tax dollars. With that said, again, I'll say I fully support what the Deerfield Parent Network is doing. I have a few quick questions. You mentioned that the cost of speakers runs between $6,000 to $20,000. That seemed a little high, the $20,000, but have you ever considered requesting a donation of speakers from like a rental company or from a local entertainment group? This would be a really nice donation write-off for them, and it would look really good as a contribution to the community. And then the other question that I have is that you have Deerfield, Riverwoods, and Bannockburn as the listed municipalities from that you approach on an annual basis for donations. I know that part of Highland Park also feeds into the district. And I guess I was a little surprised not to see them on the list. They're a much bigger municipality than Riverwoods with more students feeding into the school. And I'm not saying that each municipality's contribution should be directly proportional to the number of students that attend. I think it's something that perhaps should be considered when you make the donation requests. With about 1,200 homes, 4,000 residents. We feed into two high school districts, Stevenson and DHS. And I do feel that our contribution to all the good causes that we support should reflect the size of our small community. With that said, I fully support this donation. But if you could answer those questions just for the record, please. Thank you.
Some of the bigger speakers, we have partnered with the districts and they have contributed a large part of those. Like in this past year, our speakers were more local, so they were not as expensive. We did not have to cover travel and fees for them as we have in the past. But we do partner with 109, 112, and 113 to share the cost and bringing in some of these higher cost speakers.
What about Highland Park not being one of the municipalities on the list of donations?
I will have to look into that. I know for the after party, they're not part of our high school, so that's.
But they are. They feed into the district, part of Highland Park.
They do their own.
Separate, so there's 2 initiatives
Yeah.
here, just to be, sorry, this is why I want to, yeah. So again, just to be clear, what we came last year. So the DPN, Deerfield Parent Network, is an entity, right? So they bring all the programming, the speakers, the enrichment for the community. That's one entity. The after party, while we fall under the Deerfield Parent Network, we are a separate entity. Relative to your questions, the speaker questions will be she can answer that relative. She can answer it relative to the speakers. The answer is going to be different for the after party.
Okay.
So I didn't know which entity you were. Do you want me to answer that?
I was actually asking specifically about the after party.
You were.
Yeah. And I apologize when I read speakers, I actually meant physical speaker rental, not like public speakers.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry about that.
So that's why let us review a little bit the difference between the two entities. Deerfield Parent Network, why don't you you go first.
Okay, so we provide programming for the parents of District 109, 113. We do have an offshoot of that where we have brought in 112 now also, and their district participates. We bring in stuff from the middle school to tweens and the social scene to like what you need to know when your kid turns 18. And we do have a lot of people that come in for free and provide their support, and we just give them a donation. We have students that come in to do the panel. It's all based on donations, and we're all volunteers that run it. It's more to educate and to find topics that are, important to parenting. And we work with the superintendent, we work with the district, the teachers to kind of see what do you feel our community needs right now, and we try to base our programming off of that.
And I'm gonna have some examples.
And I have a schedule of the programming if you guys want to see them. If you'd like me to pass those out.
So that's the role of the Deerfield Parent Network in general. The after party, as I talked about last year, when it was created 18 years ago after the tragedy, it needed a home, it needed a place to go to reside. So it resides under the umbrella of the Deerfield Parent Network, but it's its own entity. So the after party, just to be clear of what it is for seniors. Deerfield High School, students that attend Deerfield High School is for those seniors after their prom. We bus them directly from the prom to the SAC Center and give them a safe after party. It's a substance-free lock-in basically event. It costs about $25,000, which is all donation-based. And we keep them there till almost 3 in the morning so that they cannot get into any trouble. On their prom night, there are a lot of statistics. Prom through graduation are some of the most dangerous times of the year. And so we do this annually to make sure that our Deerfield seniors are safe. So again, Highland Park High School does have their own after party. They have tried to get it going. We get 90% attendance at ours. They have not had that success yet. The only Highland Park students that come to our party are those that are dates of, because we invite the dates, of course, of those that are attending the prom. If you want to see I brought a picture book if you wanted to see a little bit about the party. But like I said, same thing with Bannock Burton, obviously would be, they attend because we approach them because they feed to Deerfield High School, right? Right?
Yeah, they have some students that go to Deerfield High School.
Right.
We just had a Highland Park resident walk out who is a Deerfield High School student. So part of Highland Park does feed into the district.
They choose, yeah, right. Yeah, I understand that. But the ones that choose, but yes, I understand.
Are there any other, did you get your questions answered then? Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
I guess we could, to your point, look into approaching Highland Park in the future if we
can talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Our next
to your
board
point,
meeting.
that there are some residents.
It's money, so I think it's a roll call. Roll call, please.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman?
Aye.
Trustee Hollander?
Abstain.
Trustee Jamerson?
Aye.
Trustee Smith?
Aye.
Trustee Clayton?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much for your good work.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Next on the agenda, approval of an IDOT resolution for improvement regarding Saunders Road project. Director Witt, please.
Okay, so the resolution in front of us tonight is really for an approval of the project to actually be undertaken by the Village of Riverwoods. This resolution is not in any way, shape, or form an approval of a certain amount or not an approval of an expenditure for the project, but an approval that's required by IDOT in order to get the funding actually passed through to eventually to the village. So again, we're looking at approval of the project per se.
Questions, Trustee Jamerson, please.
Do we know if the funds are available? I'm sorry, I had to ask the question.
Yeah.
We understand at this point that the funds are available for this project.
From the state?
Yes.
For all of you who are wondering what I'm talking about.
come to a screeching halt. Do I have a motion for approval, please?
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution, the IDOT resolution for improvement at Saunders Road.
Is there a second? Trustee Smith. Are there any questions or comments? Resolution, do I need a roll call? Yeah, roll call, please.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson. Trustee Smith. Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickens. Motion passes.
Okay, next item is approval of a proclamation for the Monarch Pledge. Julie. I am going to ask our village ecologist to speak just a little bit about this. As long as he's here, I think he's better suited to speak to this than I am.
I'll do my best.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Chris approached me a few weeks ago and I worked with her. I worked with a couple other communities, basically helped the village put together what the National Wildlife Federation, it's a voluntary program through them. And basically what you're saying is you're going to select a few things from their list that the village is going to do every year to support the monarch butterfly. I think this is about a 10-year-old program and there's maybe 500 or 600 communities that are doing this.
Yes.
And just, the monarch butterfly, the reason all this came up and you hear so much about the monarch butterfly in the last 10 years is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is calling it I think they call it a special concern species. So it's not endangered or threatened, but they're saying it's on the verge of that. So they call it special concern. So there's all these efforts in the last 10 years for communities and residents to just do things to improve their, like the milkweed sources and things like that. And then we report at the end of the year, I think just a simple form we fill out that we send to them of what we did because they compile that information to see what all the communities that are doing this are doing every year.
And hopefully we will have an impact. Our village clerk has been very interested in this. And we're going to be handing out milkweed seeds at Earth Day. So this is all hand in hand of that. And this proclamation is that the Village of Riverwoods does hereby proclaim Earth Day, April 22nd, 2025, as Mayor's Monarch Pledge Day, and encouraging all our residents to participate in community activities that support and celebrate monarch conservation. Trustee Hollander, please.
It's been my experience that unless you have a budget for an item, a lot of times things don't get done. I like the pledge, certainly would support it, but it seems to me if we're serious about it, we ought to at least put some money behind it, like the $2,000 we gave for the after party. So I think that if we're going to do this.
Already have. This is a proclamation, and I believe it's already part of what we're doing.
I should have mentioned that. So basically the village through the cost share programs, because one of the requirements is doing ecological restoration. So essentially the village is already doing all the things necessary to fulfill what they want without having to do anything special and cost with additional costs.
So there you go. So I'll ask for a motion to approve this proclamation, please.
Motion to approve the proclamation for Monarch Day.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you very much. And I want to point out that Ms. Barbaro has been very, very helpful and very vigilant in making sure that we get that done. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Mayor Ford, excuse me.
Yes.
Can I go back to one item? What I stated before, that on the Saunders Road resolution for improvement,
Yeah.
we are not approving, a payment of an amount, but what I should have stated was that the resolution actually authorizes the appropriation from the Rebuild Illinois and the motor fuel tax funds to supplement the cost of the $3.4 million for Saunders Road. So I just wanted to make sure that that was in the record.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, thank you very much for that added information. Appreciate it. Moving forward, the last item of new business is approval of an ordinance amending provisions of the Riverwood sign ordinance. Director Witt, would you like to speak to that, please?
Certainly. So what we have seen with regard to the widening of the Deerfield Road project that is being undertaken by the county, we have certain properties, at least 3 at the moment, that have run into an issue with the sign code. And the particular issue is that with the taking of additional land from certain properties, and particular the one that really pushed this forward would be the mobile gas station at Saunders and Deerfield Road, that taking actually ends up with having less property available for the owners of the property to install signage that would be compliant with the sign code, which requires a sign to be at least 15 feet from the property line. So prior to the taking of the right-of-way by the county, the mobile station was very well able to provide that 15 feet. But with the expansion of the roadway and the moving of the property line to the south, they no longer can make that. I think that they are somewhere in the range of the availability of about 9 to 10 feet. So what Attorney Hubert and I looked at was a way to give relief to those particular properties that are subject to this taking. It's a situation that is not on their own, caused by their own behalf, but looking at a way to still have appropriate signage. The next property in mind, which will be coming forth sometime soon, would actually be the Meadow Lake sign, where we have to widen the road. That sign will actually be taken down and will have to be shifted backwards. So this is going to give some relief to be able to maintain the signage that's existing on the property, but is impacted by the road widening.
Trustee Jamerson.
I have no issues with the amendment here to the ordinance. However, I would like to say that we do a very poor job of making sure that people are following the ordinance. I can name at least 3 places right now, if not 4, that are violating our ordinance, this sign ordinance, in one way or another. And what I'd like to see, I will vote for this because I think it's definitely needed. But I think we need to look at our sign ordinance and figure out what we want and what we're going to make sure is followed. And I hate to put another thing on Trustee Witt's plate. Director, sorry, give you an accidental.
Doesn't really want that.
Anyways, if we have ordinances on our book, we should be making sure they're followed, and this is one that is a pet peeve of mine. So if we can do something along those lines, I would really appreciate it.
You can note that, and I think the addition of our building inspector might is going to help along with that kind of thing. Is there a motion? Oh, wait, motion to waive first reading.
Excuse me, Chris.
But isn't it an ordinance?
Could I make one comment, please?
Absolutely. Trustee Smith.
Thank you, President Ford. I've got no real problem with the amendment. I do think that as the village is looking at these things, Meadow Lake coming up and whatever comes after that, we do need to take a look at the signs and the ordinances around the signs themselves to make sure that they are dark sky appropriate, to make sure that they fit within our sustainability and action plan and things like that. So I think, I'm not opposed to this. I just want to make sure that we put everybody on notice that we need to be thinking about how we do this in a more environmentally friendly way. Thank you.
I was going to say, God, the first time I'm right. Okay, may I have a motion to waive first reading, please?
I'll move to waive first reading.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Now, may I have a motion for second reading and approval?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Is there any further discussion on the ordinance, on the amendment to the ordinance? Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Trustee Smith.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Eastman.
I'm here.
Pardon me? Oh,
Aye.
Did they miss me?
a
Ordinance
quick comment
passed.
on web lighting. Yes.
On outdoor lighting. Is that it? Oh, I just wanted,
Oh,
with the
go right
indulgence
ahead.
of the mayor,
Yes.
we have a residential outdoor lighting ordinance, which was modeled after dark sky codes. And it requires that lights be shielded. And it's fairly restrictive, probably compared to most of our neighbors. Our issue with commercial properties is that we do try, for example, in parking standards, parking lot standards, we have downcast lights. You can see that over at CubeSmart. Service stations, gas stations are different because there's a need for them to be illuminated. Although in the past, I think we have shielded some of the lights over on the station over there. So I just wanted everyone to know that the village was an early adopter of some of the dark sky standards. We probably have more work to do on that.
Yep.
We did that.
Yep.
Can it?
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. The other thing is like Hawthorne Woods is really dark sky friendly. I was out at their village, I don't know, a year ago. They're talking about how signs couldn't be internally lit, so there was no kind of, I'm going to say emanation of light. I'm not sure that's the right word. Rick, you would know the right word. Excuse me, Trustee Jamerson, you would know the right word. But the idea is really just how do we make things more downward lit? And I understand gas stations need to be lit, but I think we could do a better job. Thank you, Attorney Hoovard.
Trustee Jamerson.
In regards to our lighting ordinance, another thing that we do not,
Yeah, that's a tough one.
enforce, which is also an issue
Yep.
for your cause exactly.
Yeah. Any other comments on lighting before we move forward to the item that I think everyone's been waiting for? Old business, discussion of the privatization workshop. As I stated that I would do at our last board meeting, I spoke with each of the trustees individually to get their thoughts on how we as a board and as a community move forward. Given the concerns and facts we learned and heard at the workshop, there was no appetite to continue to explore making our public residential streets private or to recover expenses for maintaining those streets. Importantly, the report was prepared especially for the workshop. The report that was prepared especially for the workshop established a single source of the history of our public roadways and identified the issues and risks, especially the litigation risks associated with privatization. The general financial concern about road maintenance was heard, and as part of staff's work in developing a comprehensive capital asset plan, we will be mindful of the major road projects as they arise. Unless a majority of the trustees tonight step forward to state their desire to keep this alive as an agenda item, we will not retain this item as unfinished business and will consider this investigation closed. If any of the trustees wish to add their comments at this time, they may do so. Trustee Smith.
Thank you, President Ford. I think what you said was very well done. And I think, as you mentioned, there are many challenges, including the legal challenges of street vacation, 51% vote for special service areas, which would likely never happen, special assessment for capital improvements, not maintenance charges, and street user fees. All of these were going to be problematic. And then, of course, there's also the voiding and violating of the understood contract between village and property owners by deciding to either buy on public roads or buy on private HOA/SSA roads. As you mentioned, I'm well aware of several groups that are considering litigation if this proceeds, and I do not believe it's worth the effort, as you mentioned, or the expense, or even the public damage and reputational damage that the Village of Riverwoods would incur by shifting position on these public roads. And really, I think kind of the last thing is, there's just all the stuff about, public roads are wider because they have to be. So how do you charge public road residents back twice as much as what a private road would be? All the things that go along with that. Public roads tend to be straighter. They tend to have trees cleared from the sides of their streets. I mean, there's just all those things that go along with that, which makes this really problematic. There are certain things that public road property owners give up, but also expect to receive in return. So thank you very much for killing this issue.
Trustee Clayton?
I agree totally with regard to your conclusion with regard to the privatization or the vacation of the streets. But I'm still interested in exploring avenues for snow plowing and other services that we provide, like landscaping. I believe there are legal ways to go about doing that, and I would like to continue that conversation. But I agree totally with what you said concerning privatization.
That conversation about recovering certain expenses for roadway maintenance, that was addressed in the report under special assessments and under user fees.
Well, that was the opinion of the village attorney.
Pardon me. And our attorney has written that part of the report, and I believe that issue presents litigation risks as well. And opening the village to any kind of prolonged litigation, I don't think is in the best interest of our community or in the best interest of the village. So when I indicated that the issue would be closed means recovering expenses as well.
But that's not your decision to make, correct?
I believe it is.
Well, I believe policy in a home rule community
There's no
is
motion on the
set
floor, and I control the agenda. The president controls the agenda. And so I've said, unless you get a majority of the trustees to step forward, to move forward on any part of this and make a motion, then it's over. We're beating a dead horse. This issue has come up time and time again in the past. I believed it was settled many years ago, and it was brought up yet again. We have an opinion from council. If you want to continue that, you might want to get your own resources to do that.
My turn now?
Yes. Trustee Clayton, please.
Policy is set by the Board of Trustees, not the president of the village. This is a situation where I have not been party to any conversations with any other trustees with regard to billing back snow plowing and landscaping fees in a legal way that minimizes the risk of litigation. We haven't explored that. I have a couple of ideas that may allow us to do that. You're cutting off the ability of the Board of Trustees to make policy for the village in an open forum with discussion. I think that's inappropriate, and I think it's something that I would continue to ask again, that I would like to consult with the village attorney on some ideas that I have with regard to snow plowing and landscaping. By the way, the landscaping of the right-of-way was not included in the costs that we saw the last time we were together. So I think that I would like to do that, and then I would like the ability to be able to move forward with a conversation with the rest of the Board of Trustees and the community, including the community outside of the areas that are currently being serviced, to see what can be done. I think that's a very reasonable request.
You're free to consult with the village attorney, as all trustees are. Is there anyone else on the board who wishes to speak to this? Is there anybody, does the board as a group, Trustee Eastman, please.
can I ask Attorney Hubert as to what the appropriate procedure is if we want to put people on the record tonight as to what the mayor has proposed? I mean, what is the actual procedure for that, right? You were implying that we need a majority to move forward.
So what the general rule is that, the agenda is, the mayor does the tentative agenda under Robert's rules. A majority of the board can add an item to the agenda. What the mayor is suggesting is he's no longer going to carry this item on the agenda unless the majority of the board wants to put it on the agenda. So nothing formal has to be tonight to put it back on the agenda, but it's basically because of the community input. I think the mayor is saying unless there's a motion and a second and a vote by the board to put the item back on the agenda, she's not planning to put it on the agenda again.
But it is true that 3 trustees can call a special meeting of the board. Is that right?
A special, well, probably.
I also have a question for Attorney Hubert.
Trustee Dickon.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but it was and unrelated to this particular issue, but I know this issue has been brought up in the past, but it was my understanding that any trustee or any resident can approach the board with the same issue as many times as they feel necessary or until they find the issue resolved to the board may choose not to take any action on it, but we all do have the right to bring up the same issue to the board's attention.
I think if you look at Robert's rules, it'll say that the intent is to have productive debate and dialogue. And so if an issue is brought up repeatedly once it's been decided, that's generally frowned upon. For example, you have the issue we had before about revisiting a vote and recalling a vote. So there's nothing to say that at a meeting someone can make a motion to place something on the agenda. It fails to achieve a majority. It could be a second meeting a month later. Someone could make the same motion to put something on the agenda. It could fail to get a majority. It would still not be on the agenda. If you ask me if they did it, 5 meetings in a row, would the mayor have the prerogative to say, I'm not entertaining that motion because it goes beyond what is, productive? I think we'd probably be getting into the arcane points of parliamentary procedure, but the mayor can't prevent someone from asking something to be on the agenda and having a vote on that. But if the vote fails, it would be highly unusual for them to say, well, can we have the vote again? Or can we have the vote again and again and again? I mean, at some point, parliamentary procedure suggests that you occupy yourself with things that you can handle productively.
Trustee Jamerson.
I don't believe that what Trustee Clayton is asking for is a rehash of the privatization of the roads. He's asking for the possibility of looking into if some of the costs could be recouped. That's what he's asking for. He's not asking for the privatization of the roads.
Exactly.
And those are 2 different things.
Those are 2 different things, but if you I'm referring you back to the report, and there were 2 sections, there were 2 other areas, special assessments and user fees, both of which were presented issues.
I mean, one
litigation
way of handling
Please,
this tonight
counsel.
is simply to say that someone makes a motion to have the issue of recouping snow removal costs from the streets that are village streets be placed on the next agenda and have a vote tonight and see if you have a majority of the votes. And then that subject matter would be on the agenda at the next meeting.
Yeah. Trustee Hollander.
I don't think a year has gone by where I haven't gotten at least 1 and occasionally 2 phone calls from various SSAs that are having difficulty finding someone to plow their road because most of them are small and the roads are narrow and it's difficult for them to find someone to do that. There was a concept at one point of whether or not to piggyback on to the provider of the snow plowing, the village roads, and see if they could do that for an SSA if they wanted them price competitive. Generally, it's not price competitive because they have to meet certain requirements that the smaller roads don't have to. But I don't think it's unreasonable for at least to take a second look at the idea whether or not some of these costs can be relooked at. I'm asking a village attorney, are you 99% positive that this is something that cannot be done legally?
No, I suggested that if you're going to have differential costs, the way to do it would be to have a proposal for which there would be an approval by either by a petition or some process that affords due process. That I'm fairly sure of.
But if we had a concept that did not involve differential costs, then neither special assessment or street user fees that you wrote in the memo would
Not
be
only
applicable.
differential, but you're just to charge someone for use of a public, you're charging someone for use of a public street. And so in general, if you look at the memo I prepared, there are techniques for doing that, but to use a technique that doesn't involve some method of the residents voicing their approval or disapproval of that would not be comporting with those procedures.
Again, not calling out a specific group of residents, but applicable to the entire village. If we had a program that was applicable to the entire village, then we wouldn't have those issues, correct? Or no?
I think there's an issue generally with charging user fees on public streets, as I mentioned in the memo. So when you say a program for the entire village, you mean if we said to everyone on every public street in the village street?
Every street.
Well, I mean, again, if you're making distinctions, you're going to fall into the trap of non-uniform taxation.
Yep.
I mean, those are my conclusions. And I've talked with other lawyers as well who are in this area who've agreed with me.
Mayor Ford, I think what you suggested was, unless there were a majority of trustees that wanted to keep this on the agenda, it was going to be dropped. I think that is all that you have asked. I don't know, maybe the question is, are there a majority of trustees that want to continue this conversation or not?
But
isn't that really the question?
Trustee Smith,
Attorney Hubbard?
I'm not asking to continue the conversation on privatization. I'm saying, I agree, that's done. I'm talking specifically.
I understand what you're saying
So when you
specifically.
say a majority, this question,
yeah,
all I'm asking, this question is defined as snow plowing and landscaping.
Yeah.
I think one way to.
It's clear that you want to talk about privatization and chargebacks of maintenance of public roads. I think what we're talking about, maintenance of public roads, snow plowing, Trustee Clayton. So I think the question that we're getting to now is this staying on the agenda or off the agenda? And whether it's one iteration or the other, it doesn't really matter.
Well, I believe that snow plowing and landscaping are not street maintenance, they're services. And so when you define it that way and you look at a program potentially for the entire village, I don't want it to stay on the agenda unless we have a motion and the majority of trustees want to talk about it. I just don't want to conclude that the board doesn't want to talk about specific elements of what we've talked about based on a consolidation of opinion that the president of the board has put together without conversation. I think it's useful to have conversation and to come to some kind of terms of agreement between the various trustees.
Let me
I don't think
suggest
that's unreasonable, but I also agree that if the majority of the board has no interest in talking about snow plowing and landscaping, we should drop it.
Well, I think at this point, it would be appropriate in a parliamentary sense, if you want to make a motion, to have the subject of recouping those expenses on the next agenda, make the motion, and then someone can second it, and then we'll know whether it should be on the agenda for further discussion and exploration.
Okay, I'll move that.
You'll move to you want to state explicitly what you'd like.
I'd like the board to consider alternatives to what was laid out in the legal memo that we have, specifically with regard to what I define as street services, and have a further conversation about that. And if the majority of the board is interested in having that on the agenda, then I'd like to have an additional conversation once I've had the opportunity to meet with the village attorney and discuss some of the alternatives and to see whether they make any legal sense.
Can I ask a clarification question?
Trustee Dickon?
In a nutshell, the topic of our discussion would be whether or not to build back snow plowing services to the residents. Am I understanding the issue correctly?
Actually, what I would like to propose is to provide a village-wide program that residents can opt into, groups of residents can opt into.
Regardless
for
of their
snow plowing
status.
or landscape maintenance, regardless of what
Of whether
neighborhood
they're on a
they're in,
public or
or whether
private
they're on
road.
a private street or not.
I will support your motion for that discussion.
The creation of a program, a village-wide program for snow plowing. That's what we're talking about then.
I'm talking about creation of a program, potentially every 3 years, in which we go out to the community and we say, if there's a certain number of homes that gather together that want to piggyback onto the village's snow plowing and landscape maintenance of right-of-way, that each one of those groups of homes could decide to opt into the program. That eliminates the need for differential taxation because it's a program that's available to everyone in the village. I'd like to have the opportunity to flesh that out with the village attorney and then come back to the board with a proposal.
No.
I don't know. Hang on,
So can I just, let me.
hang on just a minute. Hang on just a minute. Yeah.
You know, what my comment earlier is valid in the sense, every year the SSAs have problems finding someone to plow their roads. This is not.
We don't.
Well, wait, just to clarify, this would be an optional
Correct.
participation in a snowplow. So that is really not the same as what we have been talking about, which is forcing people to pay for something that they're not currently paying for. This would be an optional.
No. The village would not provide snow plowing or landscaping unless residents opted in.
Right, but if they opt in, they pay. If
Okay.
they don't opt in,
Time out.
They don't get the service.
Time out.
I'm just trying to clarify.
I don't think we're going to get that clarified tonight. I really don't. I think that Mr. Clayton would like to have a conversation with you about that. I don't think he's narrowed in on what is practical and possible and how these two issues are being conflated. I think that we can sit here for another half hour and kind of go around in that same circle. What I'm going to suggest is that I think right now here, let's just talk about privatization. And I want to close the issue of privatization. If you want to get into services that are going on and create a separate program, that's a different story. But right now, tonight, we're talking about privatization of the roads. And
We all agree. I agree.
not making those roads, keeping those roads as they are also includes the care that goes with them. The care that goes with them, the maintenance
The
that goes with
policy
them.
of the village is set by the Board of Trustees, not the president of the board. This is something that the
Make a
Board of
motion, Mike.
Trustees.
He did. And there's a
Your
second.
motion was very confused.
Well, are the rest of the trustees confused?
Can I just?
Yes.
Trustee
Can I
Jamerson.
just say, before we get into, and I mean, it just seems like what Trustee Clayton is asking is to be able to talk to the village attorney.
Yeah.
Correct? And flush out his ideas with the village attorney. And then at that point, if he finds that it's something that's doable, then he can bring it back to the board. Is that what you're asking for, Mike?
That's exactly right. I just don't want that conversation to be closed off. I agree totally that the privatization conversation is done. It should be
Well,
closed.
I don't think it's,
Well,
I
Mayor
don't
Ford
think
said
it's.
that,
well,
so why are we still talking
just-
about it?
Not sure.
Just wait a minute. I don't, I mean, personally, I don't see any reason why any one of these trustees can't talk to the village attorney.
I just said that earlier.
Right, you did.
Yes.
And so I don't think we need, this is my personal opinion, I don't think we need to make a motion and have a second. I think that the issue is that trustee Clayton wants to talk to the village attorney. Let him talk to the village attorney. Let him see if his ideas flush out legally. And if they do, then he can come back and make a motion to put whatever it is that he decides with the village attorney is doable and it doesn't create an issue for the village legally. He can ask to have it put on the agenda. And then we can see if there's a majority of the trustees that want to have that happen. I don't think we need to keep anything open. Is that correct? So why are we even
Okay,
talking
good.
about this?
Okay. Now, Sherry, there's a fella in back of you that,
My question is.
You got to go to the microphone.
you
I'm
got to go
sorry.
to the mic.
No, it's for recording.
It's recording, yeah.
My name is Remy Wilgus. I live at 2833 Hoffman Lane.
It's not on.
It's not.
Hold it close.
Yeah, it's got a gate on it. My name is Remy Wilgus. I live at 2833 Hoffman Lane. I'm just wanting to move forward with this. The questions that we're asking about is if people are going to opt in and out, does that tell me that the city is going to plow one half of the street and then in front of my house, if I didn't pay for it, they're going to leave a spot so someone blasting down the road hits a nice spot and spins out into the woods? What happens there? I'm also trying to understand what landscaping you're talking about, because I've not seen any landscaping. I've lived here for 3 years. I have not seen one bit of landscaping on Hoffman Lane.
Well, we got billed. You got billed
for what? There is still an
Wait,
AT&T line strung across the street
like to answer your
in trees.
We got billed over $1,000 for landscaping of the right of way on public streets, not including.
Which streets?
Not including Saunders or Portland.
Okay.
So it's happening somewhere.
Okay, so it's $1,000 that's being accessed, but you're saying landscaping, and everyone in this room is going, what are you talking about? Because no one sees
Nobody mows
landscaping.
in front of my house.
Okay, yeah.
I don't see landscaping. I see the landscaping I pay for on top of my taxes.
Okay.
But I'm trying to understand the question. So
Yeah.
the problem I would like to say, and just this is it, I'm done complaining. I would just like you to move forward with the vote so we all can get on with our lives. And if we do want to move on with this, please do.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
There is not going to be any vote, right? The subject's closed.
You made a motion.
You made a motion if
She
you'd like to
seconded it.
withdraw it.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, there's no motion on the floor. There's no motion on the floor. There's no action, and I think we're closed. But I'm happy to take your comments so we can keep it in mind. Sir, yes, please.
I'm Jim Hicks, and I live on Wiggum Road. You can have all the conversations you want. Problem is, you have amassed an armada right now. You've amassed an armada of people who are against this. And I realize the privatization issue is over, but what public road does not provide those other services? I mean, anywhere, in any town. Seriously. I don't know what you're thinking about. I mean, if I have to pay $100 more or $200 more, it's not enough. It's too much. It's for the principle of it.
So it's your contention that it doesn't matter if the rest of the taxpayers in the village are paying for
They moved on.
I didn't finish. Are paying for your snow plowing and whatever minor amount of
we're not gonna-
landscaping that there is.
Okay, we're not gonna debate. This is time for his question.
Yes.
Well,
Okay,
do.
go
he
ahead.
addressed the question to me, so I'm answering it.
I think it
Yeah, I
was
do.
just generally.
Because you knew what you were getting into when you bought your house. We did not. We had no agreement. We knew what our budget was. You could budget it in. Absolutely. That's just the way it was set up.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
I have way
Thank
more.
you. Julie?
Since we're talking about
differential payments, I guess is what the issue is. Could somebody please tell everybody what the grinder pumps are, what they're used for, and how much the bill's totaled?
I don't think we have that collection of information right on hand. The bill's currently on the,
Chris, I had the last 3 bills that grinder pumps were on, and I referenced this earlier when we were talking about HT Stringer. To answer Julie's question, November 6th was 21,296. January 21st, 2025 was 71,484. March 5th, today, was 79,576. So over those 4 months, I think 4 months, $172 and $556.
Could somebody inform everybody else what the grinder pumps are for and who they serve? Because I don't think a lot of people know what grinder pumps are, just to keep, so that everybody knows what we're discussing.
I'll be happy to tell you what they are. Many of you people have gravity sewer systems. Water flows downhill, right? There are places in the village that got sewers. Just as with municipal water, different places in the village got sewers at different times. There are many places in the village, South Riverwoods and east of Port Wine Road, that have that got a sewer system that is a low pressure system. It doesn't flow downhill. Grinder pumps grind up the sewage and push it out into a very small pipe, and then it eventually gets to a gravity sewer. The grinder pumps sometimes are expensive to maintain. That doesn't mean that the gravity system that many of you people have has no expense. We've spent, in the last 3 years, we've spent money on at least three lift stations for your sewers that are gravity. They go someplace, they can only go so far. You can't keep going downhill to the sewage plant. So they go so far, then they lift the sewage up and it goes back down again. They lift it up. So there are the budget for some, depending on the intergovernmental agreement that we just found out about. We were expecting to spend $2 million in the next 4 years or 5 years. I don't have the exact figure in front of me. To maintain the gravity system. So while the grinder pumps are a continuous cause for dollars, the gravity system has its own issues as well. The pipes get old, they have to be relined. There are breaks, not as many as there was with the water. So that's what the grinder pump system is. And by the way, the places in the village where that was done, it was done because the residents and the village picked the system out, to my understanding. And it was done so they didn't have to do a lot of digging. It was supposed to be cheaper in the long run. It turns out that wasn't the case.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening. David Modes from 1417 Shawnee Trail. Trustee Clayton has an issue with a $1,000 landscaping bill. So my question is, the village attorney, are you on an hourly rate, or do you have a contract for a yearly fee? How does that work?
I have an hourly rate.
You have an hourly, could you disclose what that hourly rate is?
$240 an hour.
Thank you, sir. So a $1,000 landscaping fee we got concerned with, and a $250. No, thank you. It's my comments, right? So well pumps, service pumps cost service certain areas. Grinders cost certain areas. Are we going to consider? This is a rhetorical question. Are we going to consider offsetting that cost of those people? The fire chief is here. Still here, terrific. The fire department is moving to Federal Life. Village is going to take part in that expense to a certain degree? No, not at all. What happens to the building? To the current fire department?
We are participating in the demolition.
So that is that cost to the village?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, terrific. Chief, why is that fire department moving? What percentage of the service calls goes to the location across the street that the village responds to? Roughly?
Could I ask you to
Sure.
address your comments to the board, please?
Okay.
And then,
So my question would be, we're talking about what services are being provided to who? And if that fire department is moving across the street from the assisted living location, because that is the majority source of their service calls, if we're paying for that to happen, and is the fire department going to start charging fees to who they're servicing? If 85% of the calls are going across the road, and we're making this big cost to service only that location, and only 15% of the calls go to the rest of the village, where do we draw the line, right? Mundelein can pay for roads, Vernon Hills can pay for roads. You know, why not turn the fire department into a public works? If we're going to start servicing the entire village.
thank you, and your point is well taken.
Thank you.
And we heard, yes. Carol.
So obviously, I'm here in opposition, and I won't restate too much of what I previously said. Carol Hinker, 1535 Chippewa Pathway. My concern or point is that we are spending a lot of time on a very small issue, because if now we're only talking about recouping funds for plowing, it's nominal compared to the labor and time and energy that is put into it. I don't know what response. I'm simply making a statement. I am presenting you with a FOIA, though, because I would like to know how much money we've spent on this already. And then I'll probably be giving you another FOIA if this goes forward, because the residents need to know how much money you guys are spending on these initiatives that don't go anywhere. They're not in the best.
Talk in the microphone.
They're not in the best interest of the residents. They're not equitable. There is no equity in taxing. You would make yourself insane if you tried to equitably bill every resident for the services that they use. This is a nominal issue. You're going to incur litigation. It's foolish and it needs to die. I want to know how much has been spent already, and then we'll go back and ask you in a few weeks how much more you're spending, and then you can spend more time coming up with numbers to give me so I can tell all of these people how you're spending our tax money on this. It's ridiculous. It needs to die.
Thank you. I think where we are is that Trustee Clayton would like to have a conversation with the village attorney, and that conversation may or may not result in a motion at the next meeting that would ask for something to be put on the agenda. And I think that's probably where we're going to end it in terms of prioritization. I've not heard anything different, but privatization is dead. We're arguing now about, or trying to come to some conclusions about some peripheral issues, peripheral maintenance issues. So with that, I think we need to move on. So next on the
Have we
agenda.
voted on this, though?
No.
There's no, he withdrew it.
Oh, okay.
He withdrew it. He's going to have a conversation and come back to us. Moving on to committee reports. First, Finance Committee, Trustee Clayton, please.
Thank you. The audit and the LNA engagement is going really well. I've met with Commissioner Director Vasquez. We're also worked, as he mentioned, on the budget going forward. We still have, the Finance Committee hasn't met recently, but we have banking relationships and the role of the treasurer and other things that are on the agenda for the Finance Committee the next time we meet. That's it.
Are there any questions for our Finance Chair? Okay, moving forward, Communications, Trustee Dickon, please.
Yes. before I give my report, I actually wanted to personally thank the mayor for adding a section of board comments to the overall agenda packet. I actually didn't know that it was previously there, so thank you for adding that. I mean, as trustees, we have very few responsibilities. Our job is to vote, hoping that our vote represents the community. And our second job is to add items to the agenda that we feel will benefit the community and result in cost savings or operational efficiency. I think it's important to actually have an ability for us to circulate ideas and decide whether they deserve the attention of the board. And due to the Open Meetings Act, I feel that we as a board are somewhat limited in our ability to have a discussion because we can't really do that via email. So I appreciate you adding that section to the agenda, and I'm hoping that we could make useful and productive use of our time. As a quick communications report, the quarterly postcards will be printed sometime at the end of May so that they hit the residents' mailboxes right around the same time when the finance report is published, which will probably be third meeting in April. Am I correct?
Yes, planning for the second
Or
meeting in
the second
April.
meeting in April, sorry, third week of April, yeah. The other thing is I am hoping to kick off a collaboration project between ComEd and the village. Just a very brief background. On an annual basis, ComEd hires tree removal companies to prune trees that block power lines. In many cases, these trees are invasive buckthorn that grows within the village's easement. And I think it would benefit everybody if ComEd would remove those trees permanently. It would reduce their operating costs, and it would certainly go hand in hand with the village's initiatives to remove invasive species. And I think this could also generate some exciting PR for both the village and for ComEd. I know that the tree removal companies are eager to prune that buckthorn just enough so that they could come back another year and prune it again. I've reached out to a contact at ComEd, haven't heard back from them. I'm suspecting that this will be a very slow developing project. This is very different from what I understand has been our relationship with our utilities provider, but I'm hoping that this initiative is something that will be supported by the Sustainability Task Force, and I think this will just be an overall good collaboration for the village. And I also wanted to ask if it would be possible to have a running list of agenda topics that have been put on a back burner. You know, we all get busy. We sometimes say that, you know, at some point we plan to get back to things, and then we forget. And if we could just have a bullet point list of topics that we've discussed that we said, you know, perhaps now is not a good time, but let's revisit this, you know, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, but just so that these things don't fall through the cracks. I'm wondering if this is a possibility where this list of items could be placed on the agenda and just something for us to keep as a reference. I know that, you know, we're all here because we all deeply care about the village, and I feel that we have limited ways to put ideas out and to have these productive discussions with the other trustees where there's actually a record that an initiative was made, that discussion took place. And maybe if it's a terrible idea and the trustees feel that it's a terrible idea that doesn't deserve to see the light of day, then we remove it from that list of items, and maybe sometime down the road it gets revisited. But I think it'd be great to have that bullet point list that we could just come back to from time to time and see if there's something that we want to bump up or bump down. I'm wondering how you feel about this, Mayor.
A list of prior agenda topics?
A list of topics that are worth a discussion, or a list of, so for example, if I may, I recently asked where we stand on the drainage survey. This was something that, you know,
Are you talking about the stormwater management committee?
The water survey, right. It's been a
That's
couple
in
of
the
years.
board meeting. That's been in the board minutes in the last, yes.
Correct. And I'm not trying to pick an argument. I'm simply using this as an example. This is a topic that the village had spent money on. We've brought on GHA to work on this project. There's been a decision to put it on hold. And I personally have forgotten about it. An image came up on my phone showing drainage, and so I've asked a question as to whatever happened to that. Maybe I missed something in a meeting. I don't think it's an unreasonable. And then you responded saying that this is something that, hasn't become a priority yet, but this is something that could be on one of the upcoming agendas. I think it's worth having just a bullet point list of topics that we've said, we'll get back to this. This is going to be coming up on the agenda at some time, at some point. Just a running list of topics that have been put on the back burner.
To-do lists are kind of those reminders. We all have whiteboards in our offices with to-do lists on them.
But that's not a public document.
Those arise, I think I'm probably getting confused with what you're asking, because our agenda topics are based on what's coming up, and things that, if they're not closed off, they stay open, like stormwater management is open, water infrastructure has been paused. There have been lots of things that have gotten in the way of moving forward with those.
Okay, I'll bring a very simple example. Over 2 years ago, I was asked to put together an electronic newsletter policy. I've circulated this among all the trustees. Everyone's comments have been incorporated. The village attorney and I have bounced this document back and forth for 2 years, moving sentences around. I realize that my time is free. I know the village attorney's time is not free. I was told that this item will be on last agenda. Then I was promised that this will be on this agenda. It still did not appear on this agenda. I trust that it's for good reasons. But at this point, I personally don't even care if this gets voted on. I've got one foot out of the door. But these are the types of things that could just slip through the cracks, not because there's poor intentions in mind, but simply because we get busy with other priorities. And I'm just asking for there to be a list of things that have been put on the back burner just for us to stay on top of those and revisit from time to time.
Okay, I think I understand now. Thank you. We'll work on that.
Thank you.
Are there any comments for our communications trustee? Trustee Eastman, Woodlands, Ecology and Legal.
Nothing to report. I just want to commend Julie Varvaro and Trustee Smith for putting together what I thought was a productive Woodlands cost share forum, and I'm hopeful that working together we can come up with some ideas that will make the program more functional for everyone. And Julie can talk more about that in her report.
Okay. Are there any questions for our trustee? Trustee Hollander?
No
Land
report.
Use. Trustee Jamerson, Building and Utilities and Stormwater.
The building report is in the packet, just as a highlight. I'm sorry, it was on some other page. I got it. We're in February, we had not quite, we were just shy of $1 million in construction value, which is actually not very far off of last year, surprisingly. So the building department's busy. And I would like to say that as much as I agree with many of the things you said, I would like to say that the trustees don't have not a lot to do, as you said. I've been doing a lot of stuff, and I know that there's other trustees here that do a lot of stuff all the time.
But not as a requirement of your position. You do this on a
okay.
voluntary basis, right?
I do this at a voluntary basis,
Absolutely.
but I'm volunteering to do the stuff that I need, that I think needs to be done for the village.
Absolutely. But our key
I'm not
role.
getting paid for it,
I agree.
but I don't want to go into an
No,
argument.
I think,
about-
I don't think we're
I think
arguing.
you-
I think
I
we're
think
Okay,
you were
are there any
diminishing-
questions for our building department
I
trustee?
think you were, excuse me, I think you were diminishing the time that we put in.
Not at all.
Okay.
No, not
That's
at
the
all.
way I took it, and I
No,
apologize
not
if
at
I
all.
took it wrong.
No, I said
But
that-
I know every trustee on this board, including you, has spent a lot of time, their own time, working for the village.
I think you misunderstood the intent of my
Okay,
comment.
I'm sorry. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Trustee Smith, Community Services Committee. Oh, Trustee Hollander said no.
He had no report.
He had no report. Trustee Smith,
Yeah,
please.
so community services. So I also want to thank you for the Monarch Pledge. That was part of the Mayor Caucus. So thank you for that. As I mentioned earlier about the lighting, one of the other things I learned on the Mayor Caucus was dark skies and more about how you do that and really negative impacts that has on migratory birds. So it's really something we need to think about. But there were two other things. One was the Hefty Renew, which we may have spoken at the last meeting. I couldn't quite recall, but that seems to be, LRS has seemed to have corrected their problems. They're now doing what they're supposed to be doing. There was a Hefty Renew program, meeting that I participated in that was with Swalco and Hefty. I think, Hefty. And so that was good. So they're doing more. They're actually going to be able to provide more packets so we could hand more out to residents. Maybe for Earth Day, Earth Birthday, we could get some additional packets for people to, the orange bag packets, excuse me. And then the last thing was something that Trustee Dicken had asked about was LRS and leaf pickup. I did get... Yeah, the vacuuming service, correct, thank you. I did get word back from LRS that they can't do that in Riverwoods because you have to have curbs. And there was something else. I don't remember what the other piece of that was, but essentially that service wouldn't be available to Riverwoods. I asked if they were doing it in Lincolnshire and they said they were not.
They are.
Well, I'm just telling you.
Well, it could be the village.
That's what I suggested to LRS was maybe the village was doing it. He said maybe, but he said that LRS. I'm only telling you what LRS told me. I'm not telling you right or wrong. They told me that they don't do it. I know
Actually,
I know
LRS
Deerfield
on their
does.
website lists Lincolnshire as one of the municipalities, but not to get into any further discussion.
I'm just trying to follow up on your question.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's it.
Are there any questions for our trustee? Okay, moving on, sustainability and climate action. Chairs Brightcoff and Bavaro.
Let's see. We are finalizing the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, and we're looking at the second meeting in April to give a presentation to the board. So that's our hope. We're coming along really well. We're in the final stages. It is taking a lot of time, but I think we will have a good plan when we get done with it.
Since Trustee Eastman brought up the cost share, I just wanted to say I think it went really well. We had a pretty good turnout. And as I've already told the mayor, we will be putting together some sort of presentation on the information we collected because we did get quite a bit of interesting data from the survey and from the actual forum. The planning for the Earth Day party is going really well. We have some interesting vendors. We're going to have somebody teaching about doing mushrooms in the woodlands. We're going to have somebody that's going to focus on decarbonization. Pardon? Mushrooms.
You mean planting mushrooms?
not magic mushrooms, mostly wine caps and oyster mushrooms and things. We have the perfect environment. So, but it's going to be a fun event and we're going to try to put together a little market.
We're hoping to put together this little market to make it a very unique program. I don't know of any other Earth Day type event in the area that has an ecological market that has services that Riverwoods residents would really appreciate.
Are there any questions for our chairs? Thank you very much. Strategic Land Use Committee, Trustees Clayton and Hollander.
We met with TESCA on February 26th and ironed out a plan going forward to analyze the survey results. I'll tell you in a minute how we're going to do that, but just a little preview. Connectivity within the village and walkability within the village was rated highest among almost every one of the questions that was asked. So, and surprisingly, senior-related activities were kind of ranked the lowest, so which kind of surprised me. But anyway, we've defined, TESCA is going to work with Director Witt And what we're going to have a matrix, and what we're going to do is take the characteristics of each space that and what it's suitable for that the village owns, and then try to match that up with specific ranked responses that we got to the questionnaire, so we can see which responses are appropriate for which spaces, if any. And we're also going to work in the opposite direction, because sidewalks and connectivity doesn't match to a specific space. So we're going to try to rank that backwards. And then finally, third dimension would be the time involved and the difficulty of implementation of including the cost of some of the ranked options. So our plan is to have a report to the board analyzing the results of the survey by the second board meeting in April 16th or 15th. And then from there, we can decide whether we want to formulate a land use strategy based on that.
Are there any questions other than you're going to be out of town? Are there any other questions for our trustees? Okay, moving on to board comments. Stated earlier, there seemed to be a number of ideas that were floated out there. And we created, actually, board comments was removed from the agenda sometime in 2023. And I've decided to reinstate it just because we have so many. Let's see if I can get to my comments, because I did think about this. Because we've had a number of ideas bubbling up, and so we'll put it under board comments. What I ask you to remember as we go through each of these is that I ask the board to consider that despite what might be grand ideas, we have limited resources, and we have to be mindful of diverting those resources from village operations and strategic projects. I'm also asking the board to consider that we have a standing community services committee that has been partnering with the RPC and the RRA and the Sustainability Committee, and working in partnership with them in other ways is another way to move ideas forward without diverting village resources. Partnering with the RPC, the RRA, and the Sustainability Committee actually strengthens our community through involvement of the residents rather than involvement of village staff. So I just ask you to think about those things as we move through the three items that are under board comments. And we'll start with Committee on Inclusion and Community. Trustee Clayton, would you like to go over your idea, please?
I distributed a write-up on this. It's modeled after a similar council in Glencoe, Illinois. The village attorney has been kind enough to reach out to see if I could meet with some of the people on the council or within the village staff. It involves not only forming a standing committee, but also a new position within the village to address the resource issues, which is a conversation I'd like to have with the mayor going forward. But before I spend any more time on this, going to meet with Glencoe or going forward, I just like to understand whether there's any appetite on the board for looking into this further.
Trustee Smith?
I think Trustee Clayton, while it's a good idea and well-intentioned, I believe that the village would be better served by having like a sustainability coordinator. And I think we should focus our efforts there. Although this might be a good idea, I think that's really kind of the top priority, especially since we formed a sustainability task force. And so I'd probably, to kind of Trustee Dickens' perspective is like to back burner it and then keep it open for discussion later.
Any other comments? Trustee Eastman?
I'd just say to kind of piggyback on what Trustee Smith said, I think while this idea is laudable, I think it's probably better for a community that is much larger. And I think, again, it goes to the issue of resources, and can some of these, I mean, it's nice to have these things, maybe there are things that can be done that are on this list, that could be taken on by existing staff. I guess to me, it doesn't seem like something that would need to be a dedicated staff in a village that does not have those sorts of resources that, say, Highland Park or a Glencoe would have.
Trustee
I have
Dickon.
a question. I think that's a good initiative, but I'm curious as to what had triggered it, other than the fact that Glencoe is doing it. I think overall, conceptually, it's a really good idea, but do you think we have a problem in the village of not being exclusive or being discriminative?
What actually triggered the idea initially was the ordinance on affordable housing and the issue of whether we should accept a fee in lieu as opposed to insisting on having the housing entirely in place. And that led to also kind of coordinating with other ideas that have been floated here with regard to social media implementation and the fact that a community outreach coordinator or a resident services coordinator could play a valuable role within the village, not only with regard to inclusion and community, but also in terms of the day-to-day outreach with to and from the residents. But it is, so when I started to think about that, the village attorney Bruce brought to my attention the fact that there was a committee in Glencoe that on inclusion and community that had some pretty what I consider to be some pretty significant goals for the community. And inclusion and community is something that within Riverwoods I think is lacking. And so I thought it would be a good time to address that. I hear what Trustee Smith is saying with regard to the sustainability coordinator, and I agree if we had to choose between one or the other at this point, that would be the highest short-term priority for sure, especially since I'm a member of the committee. But I did think that it could be. I did think that at some point we could do both, and being sensitive to the idea that we need to provide. If we're going to have new ideas, we need to describe what resources are required and how those resources are going to be obtained, given what the village staff has on its plate right at the moment. But if this is something that should be put on the back burner, then so be it.
Is that the general feeling of the board?
I would agree with everybody that's spoken so far.
Yes.
I think it's probably something that could go on your to-do list. Whiteboard. Down at the bottom.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. We'll certainly keep it on the, yeah, we've got some of that language in our employee manual as well. So it appears in village documents as well. Next on the list then is summer yoga in the woods. Trustee Dickon, if you'd like to talk about that, please.
Sure. I'll try to be brief. So the Riverwoods Village Hall was built with a thought in mind that this will be a place where the community gathers and where we continue to strengthen and continue to build our community. And I'm really thrilled to see all the initiatives that are undertaken by the Riverwoods Residents Association and the RPC, the annual Halloween party, the reincarnation of the arts in Riverwoods, the tree sales, the Residents Appreciation Days. I think all of those are grand initiatives. And because we're so small and because we don't have a community center, many of our residents still rely on our neighboring municipalities to provide these services. So, this ranges from karate and art classes for their kids. And, I personally drive out all the way to Glencoe every Friday of the summer to take a free sunrise yoga class, which I know is something that has been very common in our neighboring communities. And, when COVID hit, I was able to get a community of over 40 residents that would gather on my own tennis court, and we would do community yoga twice a week. So I know that there's definitely interest in the community. So I've done a brief write-up as to what this would involve, and I would like to ask the village to do a pilot program to see if if this is something that we may want to continue. I'm happy to start a petition if there's a need to demonstrate interest in this, but it's a simple initiative that really would not require any staff or supervision. This would not require police presence. Really, at the end of the day, all of this, all that would be needed is a liability insurance from the yoga instructor and liability waivers signed by anyone who chooses to participate in the program. It's a small investment of, I'm estimating, under $1,500 with $150 paid to per class to the instructors for 10 weeks and maybe a few $100 spent on marketing of the program. Wondering how the board feels, if this is something that deserves further attention or action, or if this is an idea that needs to go on the back burner.
Does anybody, Trustee Eastman, please.
I think it's an interesting idea. I guess two questions would be, I think the idea of putting together some sort of petition that shows at least there's X number of people that would utilize it. I mean, it's not committing them to doing it, but like there is demand, right? And then the second question that's a little bit more concerning would be, okay, so we do this, assuming that the village were to pick up the cost, then surely there is going to be another idea, right? I mean, there's probably other things that you could do that are similar.
Sure.
Then it's sort of, if we fund this, then where do we draw the line on the next idea
I think then we bring it to the board to entertain and discuss, and we either backburner it or kill it or approve it.
If I could share with you that I had a conversation with Kruthi Jain, that the RRA is considering and talking about a yoga class, and they would supervise it, they would run it, they would advertise it, and they have a copy of our village hall use policy, and it could be indoors. And that is something that they were looking at doing, and it would also act as a fundraiser for the RRA, which is kind of important.
I kind of like that idea because it builds up the RRA and it kind of makes that a more robust organization, and that is an organization that provides other important frameworks for the village. I mean, like the caucus system, like that's something that makes sense to support and build up. So maybe that is the way to go about it. Maybe we could do it, but go through them.
So the idea is good. It's, obviously other people were thinking in those lines as well. But if the RRA handles it, then if we choose to partner with the RRA on certain things, we can do that. But the RRA running it and taking it over and getting more awareness and involvement, that's what they were intending to do. And that's what our conversations were about. How do we strengthen the RRA? And this is one of the ideas that came up during that conversation.
So,
Yes.
President,
please.
President Ford. So I like the idea. I like the idea of RRA also being involved, and maybe depending on their willingness to participate or lack of willingness to participate, we can reconsider this, or maybe we consider partial funding with RRA to make it viable for them. I mean, I think there's lots of things, but I think we should have that conversation with RRA, but I really like the idea.
Thank you. May I quickly respond to that? So I've also spoken with Kruti regarding this and other community building activities. I think the only difference in terms of how we see specifically this yoga program is that the RRA wanted to have a paid class, and then those fees would support the RRA.
Right.
What I'm proposing is actually having the village fund this initiative and then have like a QR code that the residents could that the RA would still use this as a fundraising opportunity, but this would be a free drop-in class similar to what other municipalities are providing for their residents. So that's the only difference. They're also, and we've bounced this idea back and forth. They said that it would be happy to supervise. My idea was specifically to do this outside, not to have any impact on the indoors of the village hall, the reassembly of the room. This would, and again, this would not require any bathroom usage. This would just be something that takes place by the little gazebo.
I mean, I guess I would just add that I like the idea of the RRA potentially, like anything that can cover the costs is probably a better way to go forward. And then the one thing about having the RRA do it would be we wouldn't run into the problem where you're saying, okay, now this is a free village service, then what's the next free village service, right? If the RRA does it, they can manage that and decide what they want to support through their own stream of funding, and we don't get into the issue of we provide this for free, that's successful, then let's do this for free, and pretty soon you have, you know, a miniature park district.
Yeah, there are many other communities around us who have park districts. And so that's where the, you know, it's free except it's on your tax bill, so whatever. Trustee Jamerson.
So, I mean, I like this idea, and I think it's worth the village funding it. I would like to say that, you know, when we came to the village in 2008, the village paid for Halloween party. The village paid for the roadway cleanup, and the party that happened after that. The village paid for a lot of things. And it seems like recently we've decided as a village that we should be shirking those duties to some other organization that is going to make money. And I think that's wrong, my opinion. I'm just disappointed that, you know, I'm glad the Halloween party is still in existence. I'm a little disappointed about the roadway cleanup because the RPC was behind the actual organization of it, but the village was the ones who did the barbecue, and I think that that's still happening to some extent. But I think that you know, we've had a huge discussion tonight about services and, you know, who should pay for what. And I just think that sometimes the village needs to pay for things for their residents. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
So.
No, we did partner with the RRA on that, and we've partnered with the RPC on some other issues. But I think when we take a look at the budget and the cost of what we used to do is obviously more. And then you take a look at the budget and what can we do and what can't we do. We also we had a greater volunteer pool back in the day. We tried to do the cleanup day, and we had a hard time getting people who wanted to either drive the truck or go up and down the roads and pick up trash.
I know, I did it for years and years and years, so I know exactly how hard it was to get people to do it.
I've lived here a long time, and yes, those things happen. Our Riverwoods part of RRA used to generate a lot of funds. That isn't true anymore. Getting people to volunteer to put on these things is difficult. When I first came into office, we had staff handling those parties. So not only were we paying staff overtime to come out and staff those parties, but we paid for the food trucks and so forth. Those aren't small expenses. And so, you know, as we move forward, we tried to be more mindful and rely upon community organization. And that's the recent revival of these organizations, the RPC, the younger members of our community getting involved, the RRA. You know, we're not there yet with them. And yes, we need to partner with them and try to help them. So that I'm just speaking to that. Now, whether or not the board wants to go forward with this is a matter for discussion right now. If you'd like to go forward with this and see this brought to the board as a vote, That's something else. We have to think about number one, budget, but where do you draw the line? Where do we draw the line? We had a rather robust discussion about $2,000 to the Deerfield, to the DPN. So, how do we do that? And that's another question. But again, specific to summer yoga in the woods, I know, of course, you could always get a small group together and be outside, and we wouldn't have. You can certainly use the public areas anytime you want. And if you have a group and you find a yoga instructor, that's great. You did it, during COVID and so forth. But if there are other questions associated with it, and if the board wishes to have this on the agenda at a future meeting, that's what we're here to discuss now.
So does
Is
it
that
need a motion, or what's the? what
I
are the
can't
next
make a
steps?
motion. I'm looking to the board to see what what the board would like to do with this. Do you want to see it? Yes, no, maybe no?
Can we just bring this up to a vote, and then if the board
Well,
chooses to?
yeah, it was on here just as a discussion item.
Oh, no,
So
I'm not
really
saying
as
bring it up to a vote
tonight,
today.
But that's what
saying
I'm
can-
asking. Do we want to put it on the agenda for a future meeting to bring to a vote?
I think we should. I would just
Okay.
ask that the RRA be included in some way. in
And
whatever
commits
is
to supporting
proposed.
to babysitting this initiative?
Yeah.
And Andy, to your question, how many folks do you think is sufficient to sign a petition to make this relevant?
I defer to you as to what is a reasonable, fee and what would cover the class size, right? Whatever you think makes sense and is a usual group.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so this will be an agenda item that is, I'm seeing head shake, yes? Yes.
Possibly before my term ends?
Well, there are like 3 more meetings, and it won't be next week because next meeting because that's really filled.
So you don't think this was filled? We're at 10:15.
I know. Who knew, right?
Okay.
This had been circulating, and, it was the push to get on an agenda or to do something.
Okay.
So the next item, again, Trustee Dickon, High School Engagement Program for
Yes.
the Village of Riverwoods. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. So I have the honor of having been invited to judge the state DECA competition this coming Friday. DECA is a 501 non-for-profit career student organization that helps high school students develop career and leadership skills and has over 300,000 members throughout the United States. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. The reason this came to mind is my own daughter is a high school sophomore, and when these kids apply to colleges, they're required to have at least 80 hours of community services. So she and a friend showed up at today's meeting because this counts as community services and volunteering. And I would like to see these good kids be put to good use. They're bright, they're intelligent. My daughter is currently working with the RPC and the RRA on a couple of their branding and communications initiatives. And I'm not looking to put together any formal program, but I would like to bring to your attention that we have an abundance of bright, intelligent students who are very, very capable and who would love to contribute to our community. Please use them. Mentor them, guide them. They could be an outstanding resource. And I think it'd be a really nice thing if at the end of each year, we could do a small award and a recommendation letter thanking them for their service. There's no commitment that would be required from either the village. This would not require any commitment from the village staff. This is just to bring to the attention of the village trustees and other organizations with which the village partners that you have these resources available at your disposal. So if you have a project where you need a volunteer, you've got a pool of bright, intelligent kids who are looking for active volunteer hours. Any comments, thoughts?
Great.
This looked like a very fulsome program here. Trustee Hollander.
Yep. In the past, we have had high school kids work through the summer and do various projects. I think it's a great idea. It seems to me that not only do trustees maybe have things that could be done during the school year, little projects, but the staff probably has things that,
No,
they could, no?
no, that's a hard no. I'm sorry to say that we really don't have the staff time or the staff to accommodate high school students. We just simply don't. The RPC and the RRA have volunteer capabilities and so forth. When I read this proposal, when staff reads this proposal, there are a lot of questions about who does this, who does this, who does this, who does this.
Can you voice at least one?
Create an online application form. Who would do that?
I would do that.
Program selection and orientation, review application, match students, conduct an orientation to match program expectations with Village Values Project. Explore and encourage designated village staff to participate as mentors. Mentorship involves regular check-ins. Submit weekly progress reports to whom? Host, there are a lot of things that,
Mayor, I think
again,
you're overthinking the complexity of this.
it's a rather
not.
complex proposal.
I wanted to throw ideas out there so that this is something that we take into account anytime any trustee or any village volunteer organization has a project that they have a pool. And these were ideas of how to run with this program if they were to take on a volunteer so that there's a structured approach to this. So let's say Jeff has something going on with his Monarch project and he wants to, I don't know, hand out seeds. He'll draft up a quick blurb. We could advertise it, and I'm giving you just a high-level example. Here we would advertise this in the village newsletter saying that Trustee Smith and his committee are looking for student volunteers for Project XYZ. Jeff would be the sponsor of this project. He would provide any level of mentorship or guidance to the students. And then at the end of the year, we write him a certificate that says, you guys have volunteered for 4.5 hours. Thank you. Done.
Mayor, did I hear when, I know you interrupted me, you just said no, is that correct? That this was,
To this particular program with the involvement of staff, what Lilia what Trustee Dickon has just described makes more sense. If there's somebody who is in need of something or wants to make themselves available, we can certainly advertise that. But adopting a program like this implies administration and structure. The kinds of interns that we are considering on staff are grad students in the public administration school at Northern Illinois in order to actually be able to do work within the village setting. We're considering it because adding one more body requires oversight. It requires, delegation and so forth. High school students, we've had some experiences with high school students scanning our village documents, and that didn't work out so well. So that was, if it's just saying we have a pool, if you need help, we can connect you with the pool, we can put that in a newsletter. But any involvement on the part of staff, it's just, again, it's stretched, we're just too tight.
isn't that, I mean, I don't want to make a big argument, isn't that up to the board to see if they feel that this is an appropriate function for the village?
The mayor leads the administration, and I'm saying that the staff reports to the mayor. And I'm saying the staff does not have the time or the bandwidth to accommodate high school students. But the RPC and the RRA may well have uses for those at events and so forth. Trustee Eastman, please.
So maybe as a hybrid solution, right? I mean, I'm kind of sympathetic to both arguments and the dire need to get more high school students involved in civic participation in some way. Maybe it truly is as simple as what Trustee Dickon had said, is put together some sort of, database, right? Some sort of internet's sign up genius so that we know who's interested and we create a pool with no expectation that they would be used. But if you're the RRA and you're putting on an event, we can make some advertisement or make it aware, make the different organizations aware, or if somebody's doing Earth Day, right? And they want to help and they want to get some hours that way. It's
Yeah.
nothing that obliges us to do it, but we would know where those resources are. And maybe, just like what you had happen with the land use survey, right? I mean, those opportunities can be identified, and at least if we know who's interested, it takes you halfway down the line of who might be, and to me, that's useful.
I would think
Now-
coordinating with the school district as well would be the place to start. It's almost like it's a school program, not a village program. And if the school made a proposal to the village and said, hey, we've got a group of students, I'm sorry, you got a point on that?
Actually,
Okay.
yeah, it works backwards. So schools have a career center where employers can post jobs, and then the career center will match students with those jobs. And again, I think we're overcomplicating what I'm
Okay.
asking to do. All I'm saying is that I'd like for us to take the initiative of doing a brief article in the Village e-newsletter saying that from time to time, the village may need student volunteers for a variety of projects. And if you as a high school student are looking to get those 80 hours for your college applications, you can enter your information here and you could be matched up. You could possibly, there's no guarantee, but you could be possibly matched up with a project sponsor who may need your skills and may want to rely on you as a resource. And then we'll keep that database. And there may be a time where we reach out to that student and they say, my 80 hours are done. That was last year. And that's fine.
An article, I mean, that's doable.
Right.
That's certainly doable.
Right.
And that makes sense. That way it's,
Right, and if one of the trustees has a project, they'll draft it out and they'll have specific expectations and deadlines and a timeline, and they'll mentor that kid.
I think part of this was to determine if the board wanted to have this put on an agenda item in the future, these ideas. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, I would move that we put this on as agenda item and flesh
Okay.
out a program forward. I think that's a great idea.
As Trustee Dickens just described, creation of a newsletter. This is a rather fulsome and detailed kind of thing. I mean, it's beautiful, but it just.
I think that's up for us to decide. I'm not predisposed to anything particular, but I don't think that you can say no to something unless we've had an opportunity to discuss it. And I'd like to put it on for an
For
agenda item.
discussion, okay, fine.
Also possibly before my term ends. I mean, I guess I kind of want to have a say in this.
We've got like 3 meetings or something like that. So we'll do the best we can.
So I'll second that motion. I
Okay.
would like, are you going to ask for comments? Or if we?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the comment I would be, Trustee Dickon, maybe you just rework the document a little bit. So when.
Simplify it, make it
Simplify-
less intimidating.
Well, because it does say staff, and I think, what I heard was, like, when I was doing all this work for the cost share, doing all these pivot tables and stuff based on cost share data, it would have been really great instead of me working till 2 a.m. doing that after working a
Absolutely.
full-time job. It would have been nice to have somebody else who could have done it probably much more efficiently and much better. So, and I think, then we think about like road cleanup for Earth Day last year. Hey, if we, high school students want to come out
There
and
we go.
volunteer and get some hours to do stuff like that. I don't know, I think, Trustee Dickon, the only thing I caution is, I don't think we want to set expectations too high.
We don't.
Some of the work, I think, will be menial.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I think the only place where it says staff is under optional,
No, and I'm just saying-
optional mentorship.
I think it was just more, maybe we fine tune it a bit. And then, as I mentioned to you before, I like the idea.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got 1 back burner and 2 yeses.
Thank you.
Any other comments? There's no call to go into executive session. The time and date of our next meeting is March 18th, 7:30 PM. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.